The world stood still as news broke across every major news outlet. A 10-year-old girl had just unveiled a groundbreaking medical innovation, a self-healing artificial heart. It was the kind of story that seemed too unbelievable to be true, yet the footage was clear, the reports were consistent, and the excitement was palpable. Maya Saunders, a quiet, unassuming child, had just changed the future of medicine, whether the world was ready for it or not. The event happened during a relatively small press conference at the local university in Silicon Valley, where Maya had been invited to present her project after months of behind-the-scenes development. The audience, initially skeptical, watched in awe as Maya, seated at a makeshift podium, explained her vision with startling clarity. The audience was not only captivated by her intelligence, but by the calm confidence she exuded, far beyond her years. "I realized that the heart is more than just an organ," Maya said, her voice steady but youthful. "It's a symbol of life itself. If we can teach machines to heal themselves, why can't we teach our bodies to do the same? My heart can repair itself after any damage, just like how human tissue regenerates when we cut ourselves." Her words sent a ripple through the room. The implications were extraordinary. An artificial heart that could heal on its own? The possibilities seemed endless. And, though she was a child, Maya's knowledge of bioengineering and her meticulous research made it clear that she wasn't just playing with ideas, she had already achieved what many thought was impossible. But as the world marveled, others were far less enthusiastic. A wave of skepticism spread like wildfire. Scientists debated whether such a creation could ever be practical. Was it too dangerous? Could a child, no matter how brilliant, truly understand the consequences of something so world-altering? What about the ethical implications? Meanwhile, on the other side of the globe, a billionaire entrepreneur named Elon Musk was tuning in, not just because of the spectacle, but because something about Maya's invention intrigued him deeply. Musk, a man known for his bold ventures into space, AI, and energy, had made a career out of pushing the boundaries of technology. But even he was taken aback by the gravity of this young girl's achievement. What if this heart could do more than just save lives, he thought. What if it could change the course of human evolution? Within hours of Maya's presentation, social media exploded. Videos of her demonstration went viral. People shared clips of the young prodigy explaining how her heart worked, showing the self-healing process in action through 3D animation. Some viewed Maya as a modern-day genius, the future of science and medicine. Others were more cautious, questioning if such technology should be in the hands of a child. Comment sections erupted. "This is the future of healthcare," one user wrote. "No, this is too dangerous," another replied. "What happens if it falls into the wrong hands?" The public was captivated by Maya's youthful determination, but also deeply divided over the implications of her discovery. But Maya wasn't fazed by the sudden fame. She had always preferred her time in the lab, surrounded by tools and equipment, rather than the limelight. Her mother, Dr. Elise Saunders, a respected neuroscientist, was both proud and protective. She had always encouraged Maya's curiosity, but had always been cautious about how far her daughter should push the boundaries of science. "Just because you can, doesn't always mean you should," Elise had told Maya countless times. The world isn't always ready for innovation, and sometimes, people don't see things the way we do. But Maya's determination was unwavering. She had spent years working on her invention, sacrificing weekends, holidays, and childhood fun in favor of tinkering in her makeshift lab. And now, the world was paying attention. Maya Saunders wasn't like other children her age. While most kids her age were playing video games or hanging out with friends, Maya was coding software to model biological systems or running complex simulations on her computer. She had taught herself how to read medical journals before she could even spell all the words correctly, and by age 7, she had already started building simple robots in her garage. But the heart, it was different. It was the culmination of years of study, practice, and passion. As a child of a scientist, she had grown up in a home filled with books about the brain, the body, and the future of medicine. Her mother was an academic who worked long hours at the university, researching neural pathways and brain-computer interfaces, while her father, a venture capitalist, had long been absent from her life. Maya spent much of her time learning to fend for herself, gaining knowledge not from textbooks, but from the real world. Her mother, however, had her reservations. Despite being supportive, Elise was increasingly concerned about what would come of Maya's extraordinary abilities. She saw the cost that Maya's genius exacted, not only on her childhood, but also on her emotional well-being. Maya didn't fit in at school, and though she had a few close friends, they were often outshone by her academic accomplishments. "You need balance, Maya," Elise had told her, her voice filled with quiet concern. "Don't lose yourself in your work." Maya understood her mother's worry, but she couldn't help herself. Her passion for solving problems, for finding answers to questions that no one had thought to ask, was insatiable. And the self-healing heart, was her masterpiece. Back in Silicon Valley, Elon Musk was sitting in his office at SpaceX, watching Maya's press conference replay on his screen. He leaned forward, intrigued. "Self-healing technology for the human body?" he muttered to himself. "This could change everything." Musk had always believed in pushing the boundaries of human potential. He had already ventured into the realms of space travel, artificial intelligence, and sustainable energy, and now he was thinking about the future of medicine. If Maya's heart could work as she said, it could revolutionize the healthcare industry, possibly extending life expectancy, eliminating the need for organ transplants, or even improving human performance. The implications were mind-blowing. "She's just a kid," Musk mused. "But maybe that's exactly what we need. A fresh perspective, a new approach. I should meet her." He quickly sent a message to his assistant, "Reach out to Maya Saunders' team. I want to talk to her. Let's see what this kid is really capable of." The world had just witnessed the beginning of something extraordinary. Maya Saunders, a 10-year-old girl, had just introduced an innovation that could potentially alter the course of history. But with innovation comes risk, and with fame comes scrutiny. The story was just starting to unfold. Would Maya's invention change the world for the better? Or would it lead to unforeseen consequences? One thing was certain. The future had just gotten a whole lot more interesting. As the world buzzed with speculation over Maya's self-healing artificial heart, the young prodigy found herself caught between the excitement of her invention and the weight of the expectations placed on her shoulders. The media hailed her as a genius, a miracle child whose invention could save millions. But Maya wasn't focused on the headlines. She was far more concerned with how her life had led to this moment, and how everything could change from here on out. Maya Saunders was born into a family of brilliance. Her mother, Dr. Elise Saunders, was a neuroscientist known for her groundbreaking work on brain-computer interfaces. Elise had taught Maya to think critically from a young age, encouraging her to ask big questions and look for solutions in places where others couldn't see them. Yet despite all of Elise's love and encouragement, there was a distance between them, a subtle gap that both Maya and her mother were reluctant to address. Elise's work at the university consumed most of her time. She was often away on research trips or buried in the lab, leaving Maya to entertain herself with books and experiments at home. While Maya thrived in her solitude, Elise sometimes wished that her daughter would embrace more conventional aspects of childhood. But there was little that could stop Maya once she set her mind on something. And when Maya's obsession with artificial organs and regenerative technology took hold, there was no turning back. Maya had always been different. Unlike most children her age, she wasn't interested in playing outside or spending hours watching cartoons. Her playground was her garage. More specifically, the corner of the garage that she had converted into a laboratory. There, amidst old tools, books on biomedical engineering, and wires of all sorts, Maya spent countless hours working on her projects, often without even realizing how much time had passed. By the age of 6, Maya had taught herself to code, creating basic programs that simulated biological processes. By 8, she was experimenting with rudimentary artificial limbs, testing materials for durability and flexibility. The more she learned, the more she realized that the human body, in all its complexities, was like the ultimate puzzle. She believed that technology could not only mimic the body but could also enhance it. Her fascination with the heart had started when she was just 7 years old. After her father had left, Elise had sat Maya down to explain the concept of the heart, how it was both an organ and a symbol of life itself. Maya's curiosity grew, and soon she was researching ways to replicate the heart in machines. But Maya wanted more than just a functional replica. She wanted to create a heart that could repair itself, much like human tissue regenerates after a cut. To her, this wasn't just an academic exercise. It was a way to change the world. But with this ambition came isolation. Maya's peers didn't understand her. They found her to be too strange, too focused on things that weren't normal. As much as her mother tried to encourage socializing and making friends, Maya found comfort only in her work. The science made sense to her, and in a way, it was her refuge. As the years passed, Maya's talents became increasingly obvious to everyone around her. By the age of 10, she had already completed multiple high school-level science projects and had begun mentoring local college students in bioengineering. Still, she never quite fit in with other children her age. At school, she was often the target of teasing. Her classmates couldn't understand her obsession with biology or her long hours spent in the lab instead of playing sports or hanging out at the mall. Maya's best friend, Emma, was the only person who didn't mind spending time with her in the lab. Emma wasn't a scientist, far from it, but she respected Maya's work and often helped her sort through tools or bring snacks while Maya tinkered. Emma, with her outgoing personality, always tried to encourage Maya to have fun outside of her work. "You know, you're allowed to be a kid, right?" Emma would joke, but Maya didn't see the need. There was something thrilling about the deep focus of her work that made everything else seem unnecessary. Her mother had always been Maya's biggest supporter, but Elise struggled with her own fears. What if Maya was pushing herself too hard? What if, in her search for answers, she lost touch with the world around her? Elise had always been proud of her daughter's genius, but she was also scared. She didn't want Maya to become too consumed by her inventions, especially when she knew how high the stakes were. The evening Maya had first presented her self-healing artificial heart to the university panel was a turning point. Elise had watched from the back of the room, her heart swelling with pride, but also with concern. This wasn't just a child's curiosity anymore. Maya was about to become a public figure, and with that came a whole new set of challenges. After the presentation, when Maya was finally alone, Elise hugged her tightly. "I'm proud of you, honey, but I want you to promise me something," Elise said softly, her voice shaky. "Promise me that you'll always be careful with your ideas. You can't always control how the world will react." Maya, still flush with the excitement of her triumph, looked at her mother. "I will, Mom. But this is important. It's not just a project anymore. It's the future." Despite her mother's caution, Maya couldn't ignore the significance of her discovery. The heart wasn't just a mechanical wonder. It was a potential lifesaver. Imagine a future where people didn't have to wait years for organ transplants, where heart disease could be treated with a simple replacement that healed itself over time. But as the public's reaction grew more intense, so did the pressure on Maya. She wasn't just facing the doubts of a few skeptical scientists anymore. She was facing the world. Every interview, every question, every media appearance was an opportunity for her to either shine or falter. She began to feel the burden of her brilliance. And then, the call came. It was the morning after the press conference, and Maya had barely slept. She was sitting in the kitchen, scrolling through her phone when the notification came through. The email subject line read, "From Elon Musk, urgent." Maya's eyes widened. She had seen Musk's name in headlines, had read about his ventures into space, AI, and the future of humanity. She had followed his work closely, but the idea that he was reaching out to her was beyond her comprehension. She opened the email. "Dear Maya, I watched your presentation yesterday. I have to say, I was both impressed and intrigued. Your work with the self-healing artificial heart is groundbreaking, and I believe it has the potential to revolutionize not just medicine, but the way we think about human potential. I would like to meet with you and discuss how we can collaborate on this project. We're living in a time when technology is changing the world faster than we can keep up. I believe you're on the cusp of something truly extraordinary. Let's talk soon. Best, Elon Musk." Maya stared at the screen. She had read it multiple times to ensure she wasn't imagining things. Elon Musk, the visionary behind Tesla, SpaceX, and Neuralink, wanted to meet her. Her heart raced. She could feel the weight of the moment pressing in on her. This wasn't just a chance to talk about science. It was a crossroads. What would she do? Would she collaborate with Elon Musk, one of the most influential figures on the planet? Or would she continue down her path alone, unsure of the consequences of sharing her invention with the world? As the day wore on, Maya felt a mixture of excitement and trepidation. This could change everything. And as much as she longed for the chance to work alongside someone as brilliant as Musk, she couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning of a much larger journey, one filled with challenges, both personal and professional. Maya couldn't believe it. The email sat in front of her like a surreal dream, the words still swimming in her head. Elon Musk. The Elon Musk. She had followed his ventures into space, electric cars, and AI since she was old enough to understand technology. But this was something entirely different. He wants to meet me. Maya stared at the screen, her heart pounding in her chest. Her thoughts raced, but she couldn't seem to organize them. This was the opportunity of a lifetime, but it was also terrifying. For a girl who had spent most of her life holed up in a lab, surrounded by books and equations, the idea of collaborating with someone like Musk seemed almost absurd. What did he see in her self-healing heart? Was it just a passing interest? A fleeting moment of curiosity from one of the most famous people on the planet? Her mind began to swirl with doubts. What if he was just trying to take credit for her work? What if he wanted to turn her invention into something else entirely? Something she couldn't control? What if she wasn't ready for the kind of attention that would come with working with someone like him? Maya's fingers hovered over the keyboard, her hands trembling slightly as she prepared to respond. Do I even reply? She thought. Her mother's voice echoed in her head. Be careful, Maya. Not everyone has your best interests at heart. But the lure of making her invention a reality for millions, maybe even billions, of people was too powerful. She had always dreamed of making a difference in the world, and now, Elon Musk was giving her that chance. It was hard to ignore how he could help her amplify her invention. His influence, resources, and vision could take the self-healing heart from a small project in her garage to a global breakthrough. After a moment of hesitation, Maya took a deep breath and began typing. Dear Mr. Musk, thank you for reaching out. I'm honored that you're interested in my work. The self-healing artificial heart is something I've spent years developing, and I believe it could truly change the future of medicine. I would love to meet and discuss how we can collaborate and take this to the next level. I'm excited to see where this could lead. Sincerely, Maya Saunders. She hit send, feeling a wave of relief wash over her. It was done. The ball was now in Musk's court. As she sat back in her chair, Maya realized that her life was about to change. The path she had been walking, one filled with small, incremental steps in her lab, had suddenly widened into a vast unknown. Later that evening, as Maya was sitting in her lab, continuing to refine the algorithms that governed the heart's self-healing process, her phone buzzed. It was an unknown number, but she recognized the area code. It was from California. Her heart skipped a beat as she swiped to answer. Hello? Hi, is this Maya Saunders? Came a deep, familiar voice. Yes, this is Maya. Maya, this is Elon Musk. First off, I want to say I'm very impressed with your work. The self-healing artificial heart, it's incredible. I've watched the footage from your press conference, and I think we're on the verge of something groundbreaking here. I'd like to meet with you in person to discuss the next steps. Maya's breath caught in her throat. She had rehearsed what she would say, but now that the moment was here, words seemed to escape her. Okay, she stammered. I'd be honored. Great, Musk replied. How about tomorrow? I can have a private jet pick you up in the morning, and we can meet at the Tesla offices in Palo Alto. I'll have my team set up everything. Sound good? Maya barely had time to process the whirlwind of emotions flooding through her. Tomorrow? She'd never been on a private jet, let alone met someone like Elon Musk. But there was no turning back now. This was her chance. Yes, that sounds perfect, she said, trying to sound calm, even though her mind was racing. Awesome. I'll see you then, Maya. Looking forward to it. The call ended, leaving Maya in stunned silence. She sank back into her chair, staring at the screen of her laptop. A wave of disbelief washed over her. She was about to meet Elon Musk, the man who had sent rockets to space, revolutionized the electric car industry, and pushed the boundaries of artificial intelligence. Tomorrow, she whispered to herself. Tomorrow, everything changes. The next few hours felt like a blur. Maya didn't sleep much that night. Her mind kept replaying the conversation with Elon Musk, running through every possible scenario of their meeting. What would she say? What if he didn't like her idea? What if he had other plans for her heart? Plans she wasn't ready to accept. Her mother, Elise, was equally stunned when Maya told her about the meeting. I can't believe it. This is incredible, Maya. But remember, you need to be careful. Musk is powerful, and when you're dealing with someone like him, you need to make sure that your vision stays intact. I know, Mom, Maya said, her voice steady. I won't let anyone take my invention away from me. This is my work, and it's important. Elise nodded, though her concern was evident. Just promise me you won't let the excitement cloud your judgment. Sometimes, when things happen too fast, we lose sight of what's truly important. I promise, Maya said softly. The next morning, Maya was ushered into a sleek, private jet, her first time on one. The whole experience felt like a dream. The interior was immaculate, with plush leather seats and state-of-the-art technology. As the jet took off, Maya looked out the window at the sprawling city below, marveling at the speed and luxury of it all. For a moment, she let herself relax, allowing the hum of the engines to lull her into a state of calm. But then her mind raced again. What if I fail? What if this isn't what I think it is? But deep down, she knew that this was exactly the kind of opportunity she had been waiting for. She wasn't just going to meet with Musk. She was going to change the world. As the jet landed in Palo Alto, Maya's heart skipped a beat. She had never been to Tesla's headquarters before, and the magnitude of the place took her breath away. The sprawling campus was a hive of activity, with sleek buildings and cutting-edge technology visible at every corner. She was escorted into a sleek, minimalist conference room, where Elon Musk was already waiting, dressed casually in a black t-shirt and jeans. His presence was larger than life. Yet when he smiled and greeted her, he seemed surprisingly warm. Maya, he said, standing up to shake her hand. It's so good to meet you in person. I have to tell you, I've been thinking about your heart all night. You've created something truly revolutionary. Maya blinked, a little stunned by his enthusiasm. Thank you, Mr. Musk. I'm really excited to discuss it with you. Please call me Elon, he said with a grin. Let's get down to it. Tell me more about how this heart works and how we can take it to the next level. And just like that, the meeting began. The Tesla headquarters was everything Maya had imagined, and more. Sleek, modern, and filled with a sense of forward-thinking energy. There were robots assembling parts in one corner of the building and cutting-edge displays showcasing Tesla's latest innovations in another. It felt like she had stepped into the future. Maya followed the assistant who had escorted her from the jet into the main conference room. The walls were lined with floor-to-ceiling windows, offering a panoramic view of the Silicon Valley landscape, bathed in the warm glow of the California sun. It was a place where the next big idea was always brewing. This is it, Maya thought. This is where the future is shaped. As she entered the room, there he was, Elon Musk, sitting casually at a large, glass conference table. He was wearing his usual attire, black t-shirt, jeans, and sneakers, but even in his casual dress, there was an undeniable air of authority about him. His eyes lit up when he saw her. Maya, he greeted her warmly, standing up and offering his hand. It's a pleasure to finally meet you in person. Maya took a deep breath and shook his hand, feeling both a rush of excitement and a twinge of nervousness. Elon Musk, the man who had sent rockets to Mars, built the electric car industry, and led some of the most ambitious technological projects of our time, was standing right in front of her. And he was here to talk about her invention. Thank you for taking the time to meet with me, Elon, Maya said, trying to sound as confident as possible. She took a seat across from him, her palms slightly sweaty. Of course, Musk replied with a smile. When I saw your presentation, I knew I had to talk to you. What you've done with the self-healing heart, it's not just impressive, it's revolutionary. Maya couldn't help but feel a surge of pride. Her work was finally being recognized by someone who truly understood its potential. But with that recognition came a deeper sense of responsibility. This was no longer just her project, it was becoming part of something much bigger. I've spent a lot of time on this, Maya said, her voice steady but filled with emotion. It's been my dream to create something that could truly make a difference in people's lives. This heart, it's designed to repair itself, just like the human body does. It could save millions of lives by eliminating the need for organ transplants and minimizing the risk of heart failure. I know, Elon said, leaning forward with interest. And that's exactly why we need to talk about how we can scale this up. The technology you've developed is incredible, but what you have here is just the beginning. We need to figure out how to get this out into the world. We can't afford to wait. Maya's mind raced. She knew he was right. This wasn't just about a single invention anymore. It was about creating something that could change the course of medicine and the world. But with that potential came immense pressure. I've thought about the scale, Maya admitted, but there's so much more to consider. Ethics, regulation, long-term testing. It's not just about making a new heart. It's about ensuring it's safe and effective in the real world. Elon nodded thoughtfully, his eyes never leaving hers. I completely agree. But I have teams at Tesla and Neuralink that can help with those challenges. We're already working on biotech applications that could help accelerate your invention. What I'm thinking, Maya, is that we can combine forces and really push this thing forward. We can bring in the best people, the best resources, and make this happen faster than anyone else could. Maya's heart skipped a beat. Was he really offering her a partnership? This wasn't just a casual conversation anymore. Elon Musk, one of the most powerful and influential figures in tech, was talking about joining forces. That sounds amazing, Maya said, trying to keep her voice steady. But there's a lot to think about. I've worked on this for years on my own. I want to make sure the heart stays true to what I originally envisioned. I don't want it to become something else, something that doesn't align with my goals. Elon leaned back in his chair, his expression thoughtful. I get that, Maya. Trust me, I respect what you've done, and I want to make sure that we work together in a way that preserves your vision. But the reality is, we can't do this alone. To bring something like this to life on a global scale, we'll need massive resources, engineering teams, research, manufacturing, distribution. I can provide all of that, but we need to figure out how to make it work. Maya took a deep breath, trying to process everything he was saying. Massive resources, global scale. It was all a bit overwhelming, but she couldn't deny that the possibilities were exciting. The chance to revolutionize healthcare was right in front of her. But at what cost? How do we make sure that I'm still in control of the project? Maya asked, her voice steady. How do I make sure my work isn't diluted or taken in a direction I don't agree with? Elon's smile returned. That's a fair question, and one I'm glad you asked. We'll structure this partnership in a way that gives you ownership. You'll have control over the research and development, and you'll always have a say in the direction the project takes. But in return, we'll need to work together to navigate the business side, the funding, the scaling, the regulation. That's where I come in. Maya felt a small wave of relief. Elon's words sounded reassuring, but she couldn't shake the feeling that she was stepping into unknown territory. Was she ready for this? As their conversation continued, Elon began outlining the practical aspects of the partnership. His teams at Tesla and Neuralink were already working on similar biotech projects, and he believed they could integrate Maya's heart technology into their existing research pipelines. There were discussions about manufacturing, funding, and even potential ethical challenges they would need to address. Look, Elon said, leaning forward again, we can move quickly. We have the resources, the teams, and the infrastructure. I know how to bring groundbreaking ideas to market. If you want to change the world with this, I can help make it happen. But we need to act fast. Maya's head was spinning. This was exactly what she had dreamed of. A partnership that could make her invention real, that could bring it to the people who needed it most. But as much as the opportunity excited her, she was still hesitant. The project had always been hers. The idea, the invention, the execution, everything had come from her mind, her hands. Could she really hand over part of it to someone else? Her eyes met Elon's, and for a brief moment, she saw something beyond his usual confident demeanor. Something almost human, a reflection of the same uncertainty she was feeling. I want to make sure this is right, Maya said quietly, her voice full of resolve. Not just for me, but for the people who will need this heart. If we're going to do this, It has to be done right. Elon nodded solemnly. I hear you, Maya, and I respect that. This is a huge decision for both of us. But the reality is, we're at a crossroads. The technology you've created could change the future of medicine. We just need to figure out how to get there, and how we do that together. After hours of discussion, Maya felt like her mind was spinning. The possibilities were endless. She could feel the weight of the decision pressing on her. If she partnered with Elon Musk, she would gain access to some of the most brilliant minds and cutting-edge technologies in the world. But she would also have to share control of her work in ways she hadn't anticipated. As they wrapped up the meeting, Elon offered his hand again, a gesture of finality. I'll leave the decision to you, Maya, he said, his tone sincere. Take some time, think it over. I know this is a big choice, but if you're in, we can start right away. You have my full commitment. Maya shook his hand, a sense of determination settling in her chest. I'll think about it, and I'll get back to you soon. Maya's flight back home was a blur. She sat in the plush seat of the private jet, staring out the window at the landscape of California fading into the distance. Her mind was a whirlwind of thoughts. What if this is the opportunity of a lifetime? What if I'm not ready for what's to come? She had spent the last few hours replaying her conversation with Elon Musk over and over in her head. The passion in his voice, the energy he exuded. He truly believed in her work, and that meant something. It wasn't just about the technology. It was about the change they could make together. But with that potential came a price. Maya had always been in control of her work, and suddenly, she was facing the possibility of sharing that control with one of the most powerful men in tech. It wasn't just the scale of what Musk could bring to the table, it was the philosophy, the values. Could she trust him to keep the integrity of her vision intact? When the plane landed in her small hometown in Colorado, the contrast between the sleek, futuristic world of Silicon Valley and the familiar simplicity of her life back home was jarring. The mountains rose in the distance, their snow-capped peaks untouched by the frenzy of innovation and business deals she had just left behind. She was picked up by her mother, Elise, who greeted her with a warm hug. How was the trip? Are you okay? Maya could see the concern in her mother's eyes, the same concern that had been there ever since Maya had first started working on her heart. Elise had always supported Maya's dreams, but she had also warned her about the dangers of rushing into partnerships with powerful companies. You seem different, Elise added, her voice soft. Maya paused before responding, unsure of how to put her thoughts into words. It was intense. I met with Elon Musk. He wants to partner with me. Take the self-healing heart to the next level, scale it up, bring it to the world. Elise's eyes widened, and she took a deep breath. Wow, that's incredible, Maya. But you've been doing this on your own for so long. Are you sure this is the right decision? Maya nodded slowly, her mind still in a fog. I don't know, Mom. It feels like everything I've worked for could suddenly be within reach. But I'm not sure if I'm ready to give up control. What if I lose what made this heart special in the first place? Her mother's gaze softened as she sat down beside Maya at the kitchen table. Maya, you're the one who created this. You know what it means. But sometimes, we can't do everything alone. Sometimes, we need help to take things to the next level. But you have to ask yourself, what kind of help do you need? What are you willing to give up, and what do you want to keep? Maya turned to face her mother, her heart heavy with indecision. I'm just so scared. What if this partnership changes everything I've worked for? What if I can't handle the pressure? Elise smiled softly. I think you're stronger than you give yourself credit for. But I also think you have to trust yourself. If you feel like this is the right path, then go for it. But don't do it out of fear. Do it because it feels right for you. That evening, Maya sat in her lab, surrounded by the familiar hum of machinery and the faint scent of soldering iron in the air. The walls were lined with blueprints, data points, and prototype models, all pieces of a vision she had worked on for years. It was here, in this space, that the heart had come to life. Every corner of the room was a reflection of her dedication. She thought back to her childhood, when she first became fascinated with medicine and biology. She remembered the moment when she had learned about organ transplants, and how the idea of creating an artificial heart that could heal itself had seemed like an impossible dream. But now, it was real. and the world was taking notice. But the question still hung in the air. Was she ready to take this next step? Maya opened her laptop and stared at the email from Elon Musk one more time. His words were still fresh in her mind. "We need to act fast, Maya. The world can't wait." That urgency was something she understood. People were dying every day from heart disease, from the very things her invention could prevent. But was she willing to hand over control of that mission to someone else? Hours passed as Maya sat, her mind racing, trying to find the balance between her dreams and the reality of what a partnership with Musk could mean. The offer was too big to ignore, too important to pass up. But what if she lost her sense of purpose in the process? Around midnight, Maya finally made up her mind. She was going to take the risk. She was going to move forward with the partnership. But she needed to be clear about what she wanted. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard as she began drafting her response to Elon Musk. "Dear Elon, thank you for the incredible opportunity to collaborate with you and your teams. After much consideration, I've decided that I am ready to take the next step in bringing my self-healing heart to the world. However, I want to be clear about a few things before we move forward. While I understand the need for resources and expertise, I also want to make sure that the integrity of the project remains intact. I've spent years developing this technology, and I want to ensure that it remains true to its original purpose, to save lives and revolutionize heart treatment. I am committed to this project, but I need your assurance that my vision will guide the development and that we will prioritize ethical considerations and long-term sustainability. I believe that together, we can change the world. Let's make it happen. Sincerely, Maya Saunders." She hit send, a mixture of excitement and nervousness swelling in her chest. It was done. She had taken the plunge. Less than an hour later, Maya's phone buzzed with a new email notification. She opened it quickly, her hands trembling as she read Elon's response. "Maya, thank you for your thoughtful response. I completely agree with you. We're not just creating a product here. We're creating something that will change the future of medicine. And I want to make sure that we stay true to that mission. I give you my word that you will remain at the helm of this project. You will have the final say in the research and development, and I will work with you to ensure that we are always aligned with your vision. Let's make this happen. The future is waiting. Elon Musk." Maya stared at the email for a long moment, her heart pounding. She had done it. She had taken the first step toward a partnership with one of the most influential men in the world, but she had also made it clear that her vision was not up for negotiation. She leaned back in her chair, a sense of calm settling over her. This is it, she thought. This is the beginning of something huge. The next few weeks were a blur of meetings, conference calls, and strategy sessions. Maya dove headfirst into the partnership with Elon Musk, feeling both exhilarated and overwhelmed by the scale of what she was about to undertake. It wasn't just the technology. It was the entire process of turning her invention into a product that could be mass-produced, distributed, and, most importantly, used to save lives. She had moved her operations from her small lab in Colorado to the Tesla campus in Palo Alto, where she would now work side by side with Musk's teams. The space was massive, far larger than anything she had ever seen. Engineers, biotechnologists, and data scientists all worked in sync, their energy palpable in the air. Everything was fast-paced, everything was cutting-edge. This was the future, Maya realized, and I'm right in the middle of it. The first few days were filled with excitement. Elon introduced her to his top engineers, each one eager to collaborate. It felt like every meeting was a brainstorming session, with ideas flying across the room faster than Maya could keep up. But as much as the energy was invigorating, there was also an undercurrent of tension. Not everyone was thrilled about her sudden involvement in such a high-stakes project. Maya could feel it in the subtle glances exchanged between some of the Tesla engineers. They didn't say much, at least not to her face, but there was a quiet skepticism in their eyes. She was new. She was young. And, most importantly, she was an outsider who had never worked in an environment like this before. One day, after a particularly intense meeting about scaling the heart's technology for mass production, Maya felt the weight of the room settle on her shoulders. Elon had been excited about the possibilities, but the engineers, while polite, were less convinced. After the meeting, she found herself walking down the long corridors of the Tesla building, her mind racing. What if they don't believe in me? What if they think I don't belong here? As she rounded a corner, she bumped into one of the lead engineers, a man named Jason, who was one of the more vocal critics during the meeting. He had a reputation for being blunt and direct, traits that often made him seem standoffish. But today, his expression was different. There was something almost apologetic in his eyes. "Hey, Maya," Jason said, his voice softer than usual. "Can we talk?" Maya nodded, surprised. "Sure. What's on your mind?" Jason hesitated before speaking. "Look, I've been thinking about the meeting earlier. I know I wasn't exactly enthusiastic, and I get why you might be frustrated with me. It's just that the technology you've developed, it's groundbreaking. But there are so many unknowns, and we need to be careful. The stakes are high." Maya felt a knot form in her stomach. "I know the stakes are high. I wouldn't be here if I didn't know that. But I also know this could save lives. This could change everything." Jason nodded. "I believe you. I do. It's just, we've got to make sure this doesn't fail. The last thing we want is to rush into something without fully understanding all the risks. This isn't just a new gadget, Maya. It's a new organ. We're talking about human lives here." Maya met his gaze, feeling the weight of his words. She understood the pressure he was under, and it was clear he wasn't questioning her abilities. He was questioning the entire process. The engineering challenges were immense. "I get it," Maya said, her voice steady, "but I'm not rushing anything. I want to make sure this is done right too. But if we don't push forward, we might never get the chance to change things. And the people who need this heart, well, they don't have time to wait." Jason looked at her for a long moment, then nodded. "I can respect that. Just know that we're all in this together. And we need to be on the same page if we're going to make it work." Over the next few weeks, Maya worked closely with Jason and his team. Slowly but surely, she began to gain their respect. She wasn't just the young inventor from Colorado anymore. She was a key player in an incredibly ambitious project, but the road ahead was still filled with obstacles. One evening, Elon pulled Maya aside for a private conversation. "We're hitting some bumps in the road," he said, his voice serious. "I think it's time we take a step back and figure out what's going wrong. We can't afford to go too fast, especially with something this important." Maya felt a mixture of frustration and relief. "I've been saying that, Elon. There's no shortcut to this. We need to test, retest, and test again. We're not just making something for the market. We're creating something that will affect people's lives, their health. We can't afford to be careless." "I know," Elon said, his tone softer now, "but you're right. We've got to get it right. And maybe that means taking a little more time. I'm going to back you on this. But I need you to convince the rest of the team that we're not just moving forward with blind ambition. We need a plan, a solid one." Maya took a deep breath. "I'll talk to them. I'll make sure everyone understands why we can't rush this. Not when it's people's lives at stake." Elon smiled. "Good. That's why I brought you on board." The next week, Maya called a meeting with all the lead engineers, including Jason, and presented a proposal for a new, slower-paced approach. She laid out a detailed timeline that focused on extended testing, simulations, and smaller-scale trials before moving on to larger, more ambitious production models. "We can't afford to get ahead of ourselves," Maya said, her voice steady but passionate. "We need to make sure that we can predict how this heart will behave in the human body under various conditions. It's not enough to just build it. We need to know that it will work in the real world." The room was silent as the team listened. Jason, who had once been skeptical, was nodding thoughtfully. "You've got a point," he said. "If we rush, we could make a mistake that would set us back months or even years. Testing is the only way to make sure we don't miss anything important." Maya smiled, grateful for the support. "Exactly. We need to be thorough. I believe in this technology, and I believe in all of you. But if we want to make this work, we have to make sure every step is accounted for." Elon, who had been sitting in the back of the room, finally spoke up. "I think we're all on the same page. Maya's plan is sound. Let's do this the right way. Let's build a future that we can be proud of." As the weeks turned into months, the new approach began to pay off. Maya worked tirelessly with the team, refining the design, conducting tests, and ensuring that every aspect of the heart was functioning as it should. The process was slow, but it felt right. It was methodical, and it gave Maya the peace of mind she needed to know that they weren't cutting corners. Then, one day, after months of testing, Maya and Jason stood in the lab, watching as a test heart began to repair itself after a simulated attack on its tissue. It was a breakthrough. The heart was healing itself, just like it was supposed to. Maya turned to Jason, her eyes wide with disbelief. "It's working. It's really working." Jason grinned, his face lighting up. "You did it. We did it." For the first time in months, Maya felt a sense of accomplishment wash over her. This was it. This was the moment that would change everything. The euphoria from the successful test run of the self-healing heart was short-lived. As Maya and the team celebrated their breakthrough, the reality of what came next hit her hard. The first human trial. There was no turning back now. The excitement, the pressure, the ethical dilemmas. All of it was converging into a single moment that would determine the future of her invention. And this time, it wouldn't be just a lab test. There were real lives at stake. Maya had always been sure of her invention. She had poured years of research and work into it. But as she sat in her new office at Tesla's research campus, staring out over the sprawling campus, she couldn't shake the weight of the decision before her. The human trial was the next step, but it was also the most dangerous. The risks were enormous, and the consequences of failure could be catastrophic, not just for her career, but for the very people whose lives the heart was designed to save. What if the technology didn't work as expected in a human body? What if it caused harm rather than healing? She glanced down at the folder on her desk. It contained the profiles of the volunteer patients, people who had signed up for the trial. There was a mix of ages, conditions, and backgrounds. Some had been waiting for years for a heart transplant. Some had no other option but to try the experimental procedure. They were desperate, and that made the decision even harder. Elon had been clear. He was backing her fully, but he also made it clear that they couldn't afford to wait any longer. The world was ready for this technology, but was Maya? The team had gathered for a final review of the trial protocol, and the atmosphere in the room was tense. Elon had been pacing at the front of the room, his usual confidence tempered by the gravity of the situation. "Okay, team, this is it," he said, stopping to look at Maya. "We've got the green light from all the regulatory bodies. The equipment is ready. The patients are on standby. We can't turn back now." Maya swallowed hard, feeling her throat dry up. This was the moment when everything could go right, or everything could go wrong. Jason, the lead engineer who had become one of her closest allies, leaned forward. "Maya, I've been with you from the start, but I want to make sure we're not rushing this. There are so many variables with human trials. What if there's something we've missed? What if it's not as effective as we think it is?" Maya turned to him, the weight of his words settling heavily in her chest. "I know. I'm scared too, Jason, but we've tested it more than anything else. The animal trials, the simulations, they all showed promise. The heart is self-healing. It works. I believe in it." Jason didn't look convinced. "I know you believe in it, but this is different. It's one thing to test on animals, another thing entirely to test on human beings. These are people's lives, Maya. We can't be reckless." Elon cut in, his voice firm. "Jason's right. But this is also the moment we've all been working for. We've done everything we can to prepare. Now we need to move forward. We trust you, Maya. You've got this." Maya felt a rush of responsibility hit her, and for a moment, she wished she could push the burden onto someone else. But deep down, she knew that the heart was the future, and it was her responsibility to lead them into that future. "I'm ready," she said, her voice steady. "I've spent my whole life preparing for this. We can't wait any longer. Let's do this." The first patient to undergo the trial was a middle-aged man named Victor Harris, a former firefighter who had been waiting for a heart transplant for nearly 5 years. His body was rejecting a previous heart transplant, and his health had been deteriorating rapidly. Maya sat in the observation room as Victor was wheeled into the operating theater. Elon, Jason, and several other members of the team were gathered around, watching as the surgical team prepped for the procedure. The tension in the air was palpable. As the surgeons made the first incision, Maya's heart was in her throat. This was it. This was the moment that would change everything. She looked over at Elon, who was watching intently, his eyes unwavering. For all his bravado, she could see the uncertainty in his expression. He wasn't immune to the stakes. "Let's hope we've done our homework," Elon muttered, almost to himself. The minutes stretched into what felt like hours as the surgical team carefully implanted the self-healing heart into Victor's chest. Maya had worked closely with the surgeons to make sure everything was as perfect as possible. But despite all the planning, all the tests, nothing could fully prepare her for the next few moments. The moment the heart was connected, a hush fell over the room. For several tense seconds, nothing happened. Then, slowly, the heart began to beat. Maya's breath caught in her throat. It's working. The heart was beating. Victor's body was accepting the new organ. The operation was deemed a success, but the real test came afterward. Maya had seen the heart beat on the operating table, but would it continue to function in the body? Would it self-heal as it had in the lab? Over the next 48 hours, Maya and the team watched Victor closely. They monitored his vitals, running every test possible to ensure the heart was integrating properly. The heart had to prove that it could not only function on its own, but also heal itself if it encountered any damage, just like in the lab. Jason kept an eye on the data. It's holding steady. His vitals are looking good. Maya stood by the observation window, watching Victor sleep. His chest rose and fell with each breath, the rhythmic thump of the heart beneath his skin. For the first time in a long while, she allowed herself to believe this could actually work. As the hours passed, the surgical team was finally able to reduce the amount of monitoring. The heart was doing its job. The self-healing process had kicked in, and the data showed that it was responding to minor stressors just like it was supposed to. Finally, after nearly 2 days of intense observation, the team deemed Victor stable enough to wake up. His eyes fluttered open, and the first thing he saw was Maya standing by his bed. "Victor," Maya said softly, "how are you feeling?" Victor's eyes widened as he looked at her. I feel good. Really good. Better than I have in years." Maya's heart swelled with pride. This was the moment she had worked for. The self-healing heart had passed its first test. Victor was alive, and the technology was working just as it should. As Victor was wheeled out of the recovery room, smiling and thanking the medical team, Elon pulled Maya aside. "You did it," he said, his voice filled with genuine admiration. "This is just the beginning, Maya. We're going to change the world with this." Maya took a deep breath, her hands still trembling slightly. "I can't believe it. I was so scared. But it worked. It really worked." "You should be proud," Elon said. "This is a huge step forward, not just for us, but for the future of medicine. You've done something no one thought was possible." Maya nodded, looking back at the recovery room where Victor was being tended to. "I've always believed in this technology, but I never imagined it would have the power to save someone's life like this." As the reality of the situation began to sink in, Maya realized that this was just the beginning. The road ahead was still long, and there would be challenges to overcome. But for the first time, she felt a sense of peace. They were on the verge of something revolutionary. The day after Victor Harris's successful heart implant, the world had already begun to take notice. News outlets picked up the story, and soon it was everywhere. Headlines splashed across every major platform, articles detailing the first successful human trial of the self-healing artificial heart. For Maya, it felt like the world was moving faster than she could keep up with. Her phone buzzed constantly with notifications, interviews, requests for comment, invitations to appear on talk shows. The media storm was relentless, and it was only going to get bigger. It was as though every outlet in the world suddenly knew her name. But behind the flash of cameras and the endless barrage of questions, Maya couldn't shake the overwhelming weight of responsibility she now carried. She had built something that had the potential to save millions of lives. But how would the world react to the pressure that came with it? Maya's first major media interview came the morning after the successful trial. She was sitting in front of a camera, her palms sweating, but trying to maintain a calm and collected demeanor. The host, a seasoned journalist named Laura Banks, greeted her with a smile. "Good morning, Maya. I have to say, what you've accomplished is nothing short of miraculous. The first successful human trial of an artificial, self-healing heart. The world is watching. How does it feel? Maya smiled politely, but internally, she was a bundle of nerves. She had never done a live interview before, let alone one with so much at stake. But she had prepared for this moment, even if she didn't feel quite ready. It's overwhelming, Maya replied, taking a deep breath. But at the same time, it's incredibly rewarding. We've been working on this technology for years, and seeing it finally make a difference in someone's life is the best feeling in the world. Laura nodded. You've done something incredible, but many people are asking, what's next? Is this the beginning of a new era in medicine? Can we expect this technology to be available to the public soon? Maya hesitated. The truth was, they were still in the early stages. While the first trial had been a success, there were many more hurdles to overcome. She had to walk the fine line between excitement and caution. Well, it's still early. We're only at the beginning of the clinical trials, and there are a lot of hurdles ahead. We need to test this in more patients, analyze long-term data, and ensure that it's safe and effective for everyone. But yes, I do believe this could be the beginning of something revolutionary. Our goal is to make this technology accessible to as many people as possible. The potential is limitless. As the day wore on, Maya found herself caught in a whirlwind of press conferences, briefings, and meetings with legal teams to ensure that the technology was protected by patents. The media circus had officially begun, and she was at the center of it. The problem, however, was that not everyone was convinced. While the success of the first trial was a triumph, there were many who remained skeptical. The questions came fast and furious. How could something so groundbreaking be real? What if it didn't work for everyone? Was this the start of an entirely new field of medicine, or a dangerous gamble? By the end of the day, Maya was exhausted, both physically and emotionally. She had answered hundreds of questions, some thoughtful, others probing, and a few downright invasive. One question in particular had stuck with her. Maya, you're only 28. Do you feel like you're in over your head? The question had been asked by a reporter who didn't know the first thing about her. They saw her youth, her relative inexperience compared to the titans of the tech and medical worlds she was now working with, and they were quick to judge. But Maya wasn't over her head. She'd worked for this moment her entire life, and she wasn't about to let anyone diminish that. That evening, after a long day of press conferences, Maya retreated to her office. She was alone, for once, and the silence felt like a rare gift. She sat at her desk, hands still shaking slightly from the onslaught of the day, when there was a knock at her door. Elon? She asked, surprised to see him standing there, his usual confident demeanor tempered with something softer. Mind if I join you? He asked, stepping in without waiting for an answer. He shut the door gently behind him and took a seat across from her. Maya sighed, rubbing her eyes. I'm not sure I can take much more of this. It's like I'm on a roller coaster that won't stop. I know the feeling, Elon replied, leaning back in the chair and folding his arms. It's a lot, but it's only going to get more intense. The media will be relentless. The world will be watching every move you make. You've got to stay focused on the bigger picture. Maya looked up, meeting his gaze. It's so much pressure. I didn't expect this kind of attention, and I feel like I'm under a microscope. I'm scared of making a mistake. Elon studied her for a long moment before speaking. You're not alone in this. You've got a whole team behind you, and I'm right here. We'll make sure you don't go off track. The pressure is part of the game. But you've got to remember one thing. This isn't about you. It's about the technology. It's about changing the world. That's your North Star. Keep your eyes on that, and everything else will fall into place. Maya nodded slowly, his words sinking in. The noise and pressure could be overwhelming, but she had a mission. She couldn't let herself get distracted by the scrutiny. You're right, she said, her voice gaining strength. This isn't about me. It's about making sure that heart reaches everyone who needs it. And no matter what, I won't let that slip. As the days passed, the media circus only grew. But so did the scrutiny. Not everyone was as optimistic about the heart's potential as Maya and Elon were. There were voices of dissent, many of whom were calling for more caution. Maya had expected some pushback, but the vitriol from some quarters was harder to stomach than she had anticipated. There were the articles questioning the ethical implications of a self-healing organ, what it meant for organ donors, and the future of transplant medicine. There were the experts pointing out the still unknown long-term risks, the lack of extensive clinical trials, and the dangers of rushing such groundbreaking technology into human bodies. At times, the pressure felt unbearable. Maya found herself questioning whether she had done the right thing. She had always believed in her invention, but the stakes were higher now. The weight of the world was on her shoulders. It was Jason who, once again, became her sounding board. "Hey, Maya," he said one afternoon, as they sat in a quiet conference room reviewing the latest trial results. "I get that this is a lot, but you've got to stay focused. You've got something incredible here. Don't let the noise drown you out." Maya smiled weakly, grateful for his steady support. "It's just so overwhelming. I've worked my whole life for this, and now I'm terrified I'm going to screw it up." "You won't," Jason said, his voice firm. "You've already done the hardest part. The heart is working. People are getting better because of it. Focus on that. Don't get sidetracked by the critics. If you keep doing the work, the results will speak for themselves." In the coming days, the public's perception began to shift. More and more patients were lining up for the trials. Hospitals and medical centers worldwide started expressing interest in adopting the technology. The buzz was real. People were excited, and patients were hopeful. And then, on the 10th day of media appearances and press conferences, a headline appeared that would change everything. "Self-healing artificial heart, a revolutionary breakthrough in medicine. First human trial success sparks global interest." The world was waking up to what Maya had created. The critics were still out there, but their voices were no longer as loud as before. The heart was working. People were living because of it. Maya knew the road ahead was still long. The trials needed to continue. The technology needed to be refined and perfected. But for the first time, she felt like maybe, just maybe, this could be the turning point the world needed. Maya sat in her office, staring at the mountains of paperwork on her desk. The trials were progressing, and more patients were being enrolled for the second phase of the self-healing heart's human trials. But with each success came new challenges. The world was watching, and so were the critics. One particular aspect of the ongoing trials had started to gnaw at her: the ethical dilemma of using the heart as a replacement for organ donations. People were already questioning the implications for the traditional organ transplant system, especially as the artificial heart proved to be more reliable and functional than a human donor heart. Was she helping save lives, or was she inadvertently putting organ donation systems at risk? The questions weighed heavily on her mind. As the media attention grew, so did the pressure from various advocacy groups and medical professionals. The heart was an undeniable success in terms of functionality and innovation, but the idea that it could one day replace donor hearts, the ultimate solution to the organ shortage crisis, was something many found controversial. A week ago, Maya had received an email from the National Organ Transplant Association, NOTA. The subject line had read, "Urgent. Request for a public discussion on the future of organ donations and artificial hearts." The email was polite, but the tone was firm. The organization had requested a formal meeting with her team to discuss the potential ramifications of her invention on the future of organ donations. They had concerns that the heart's widespread success could lead to a reduction in the need for organ donations, ultimately affecting millions of lives. Her stomach twisted as she reread the email. She had always been committed to solving the organ shortage crisis, but the idea of disrupting the delicate balance of the existing system was daunting. Would her invention really take away the need for human donors? Would it save more lives than it risked? The day of the meeting arrived, and Maya walked into the conference room with a heavy heart. Elon and Jason were by her side, but even they seemed aware of the delicate nature of the discussion. The representatives from NOTA were seated at the table, wearing serious expressions. Dr. Carol Benton, the president of NOTA, a distinguished woman in her late 50s, stood and extended her hand. "Maya," she said with a warm but firm smile, "thank you for meeting with us today. We've been following your work closely, and we want to commend you for your ingenuity and dedication. However, we need to address some concerns that have been brought up regarding the impact of your artificial heart technology." Maya shook her hand, trying to maintain her composure. "Of course, Dr. Benton. I appreciate you taking the time to meet with us. We've always had the goal of addressing the organ shortage crisis, but I understand that there are some complexities involved. Dr. Benton nodded gravely. The artificial heart is a promising innovation, no question about it. But the question we need to answer is whether it will help solve the organ crisis or create a new one. Maya glanced at Elon and Jason, both of whom gave her encouraging looks. I'm happy to discuss any concerns. I believe we're still in the early stages of development, but our goal is always to save as many lives as possible. We want to work with organ donation systems, not against them. Dr. Benton leaned forward. That's the key issue, Maya. The more successful your heart becomes, the fewer people will be waiting for organ transplants. That's the reality we're facing. And in turn, fewer people may choose to donate their organs. While your heart is solving a critical shortage, it could also result in a decrease in available hearts for those who need them. Elon interjected before Maya could respond. I understand your concern, Dr. Benton, but don't we have a responsibility to push forward with technology that can save more lives? If we can offer a solution that's viable, reliable, and permanent, shouldn't we be focusing on getting it to the people who need it most? Jason, who had been silent up until now, added, the world has always been on the brink of a shortage of donor organs. Artificial hearts can bridge that gap and prevent people from dying while they wait for a transplant. Maya could feel the tension rising. Dr. Benton didn't look convinced. The world does need a solution, yes, she said, her voice measured. But we must be cautious about how we disrupt the current system. If we push too fast, we could end up creating new problems. We can't simply replace one crisis with another. Maya understood the concern. In theory, her invention could make the need for organ donors obsolete. But she didn't believe that would be the case. She wasn't against organ donation. She was for saving lives in any way possible. I don't see it as a replacement, Maya said quietly. The artificial heart could be a solution for patients who are ineligible for a donor heart, or those who are waiting on the list for years. We still need organ donation. We still need those hearts. But with the artificial heart, we can provide a longer-lasting, self-healing solution for those who need it. Dr. Benton's expression softened slightly. That's one perspective, Maya. But it's still a delicate issue. We will need to do more studies, more research. The public needs to understand the value of both systems, donor hearts and artificial hearts. If we don't communicate that clearly, we risk causing irreversible damage to the entire transplant system. Maya nodded. I understand. I'm not trying to destroy the system. I'm trying to enhance it. Together, we can ensure that no one has to die while waiting for a heart. Dr. Benton considered this for a moment, then leaned back in her chair. This conversation isn't over. We'll need to continue working together, Maya. The future of organ donation and artificial organs is a shared responsibility. Maya sighed in relief. The conversation had been difficult, but it was clear that there was common ground between them. They were on the same team, after all. Despite the relatively amicable end to the meeting, Maya was well aware that the ethical concerns surrounding the artificial heart were far from resolved. The public opinion was divided. News outlets picked up on the controversy, and soon the media was buzzing with debates over whether artificial hearts should be used in place of human organ donations. Some argued that this was the future of medicine, that Maya's innovation could end the waiting lists and save countless lives. Others warned that it could irreparably harm the organ donation system, leading to fewer willing donors. But it wasn't just the general public that Maya had to worry about. Within the medical community, there were whispers of doubt. While some doctors hailed the self-healing heart as a miracle, others questioned its long-term viability. Could it truly replicate the complexity and functionality of a human heart over decades of use? Would the body ever fully accept it, or would complications arise as time went on? Maya's email inbox overflowed with messages, some supportive, others filled with harsh criticisms. The press, meanwhile, had become even more relentless, digging deeper into her past, questioning her motivations, and casting shadows over her achievements. One article in particular stood out to her. The headline read, Maya Johnson's Artificial Heart, a brave step forward or a dangerous gamble? As the scrutiny continued, Maya found herself questioning her next steps. Would she continue pushing forward with the technology, despite the ethical dilemmas and growing opposition? Or would she back off and allow the public debate to settle before making any decisions? It was then that Elon called her into his office. He was seated behind his desk, but there was an air of calm about him, something that had always been comforting, especially when things felt chaotic. "You look like you've had a rough day," Elon said, offering her a seat. "What's going on?" Maya hesitated, her hands shaking slightly. "The ethical backlash. The media is all over the place. People are questioning whether I'm doing the right thing. I'm starting to wonder if this is going too far too fast." Elon leaned forward. "Look, I get it. There's a lot of noise out there. But you've always known that this wasn't going to be easy. The future isn't built on staying safe. It's built on taking risks. You've created something that could save millions of lives. And the world is going to push back. That's just part of the process. But in the end, if you believe in what you're doing, don't let anyone talk you out of it." Maya smiled weakly. "You make it sound so simple." Elon shrugged. "It's not simple. It's never simple. But that's the thing. You're changing the world. That's why it's complicated. Keep going. Trust your instincts. Trust the technology. You're on the right path." Maya left Elon's office with a renewed sense of purpose. The critics would keep coming. The ethical questions would continue to rise. But she had a vision, and she knew that vision was worth fighting for. The self-healing heart wasn't just a medical innovation. It was a revolution. And no matter how tough the road ahead was, she wouldn't back down now. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough? Maya had barely settled into her routine when the call came. It was an offer she had been dreading. The company on the other end was MedCorp, one of the largest and most influential healthcare conglomerates in the world. They had been keeping a close eye on her artificial heart technology from the very beginning, and now they were ready to make a move. The pitch was simple. Partner with them, and MedCorp would provide the resources and infrastructure to push her heart to a global scale. They promised rapid deployment of the technology to hospitals across the world, offering financial backing, manufacturing capabilities, and access to a network of medical professionals eager to use the heart in their practices. But there was a catch. The offer came through during a quiet afternoon at the office. Maya was hunched over her desk, reviewing the latest batch of trial data. She had just received an email from Dr. Thomas Lee, the lead researcher on the second phase of the trials, when her phone buzzed with an incoming call. The name MedCorp flashed across the screen. Maya picked up with a mixture of curiosity and wariness. "Maya Johnson?" A voice on the other end greeted her. "Yes, this is Maya," she replied. "This is Michael Carter from MedCorp. I'm sure you've heard of us. We've been following your work very closely, and we'd like to offer you an exclusive partnership that could change the trajectory of your self-healing heart technology. We believe that with the right support, your invention could be deployed across hospitals worldwide, saving millions of lives. What you've created is revolutionary, and we want to help you get it to the people who need it most." Maya's heart raced. It wasn't the first time a corporation had shown interest in her work, but MedCorp was the giant of the industry. Their resources could accelerate her project to an unprecedented scale. For a moment, she allowed herself to imagine the possibilities. More hearts, more lives saved, less time waiting for approval. It could be the breakthrough that changed everything. But as much as the offer tempted her, she knew there was a dark side to it. Maya had seen this before. Corporate takeovers of revolutionary technologies had a way of twisting the original purpose. MedCorp wasn't just offering to fund her dream. They were offering control. Control over the technology, over its distribution, and over how it was used. Maya could hear the weight of his words. He understood the dilemma more than anyone else. "I don't want to lose control of this, Jason," Maya continued. "I believe in what we're doing, but I don't want it to become just another money-making machine. I want it to stay about the people who need it, the patients, the families, the doctors. I don't want to be forced into a position where I'm just another cog in a corporate wheel." Jason sighed, clearly conflicted. "I don't have a simple answer for you, Maya, but I will say this. You've always been about the mission. If MedCorp is offering you a partnership, it's because they believe in the heart, in what you've built. Maybe there's a way to find a balance. Let them help scale the technology without losing your soul in the process." Maya's next stop was Elon. He had been the one to encourage her from the beginning, the one who had believed in her when no one else did. She needed his perspective, someone who had experience in navigating both the tech and business worlds. She found him in his private office at Neuralink, his company's headquarters, which was bustling with activity even in the late hours of the evening. He greeted her with his usual energy, though there was a noticeable tiredness in his eyes. "Maya, what's going on? You look like you've got a lot on your mind." Maya sat down across from him, laying out the details of MedCorp's offer. She explained her concerns, the potential compromises, the fear of losing control, and the impact on her original vision. Elon leaned back in his chair, rubbing his chin thoughtfully. After a moment, he spoke. "I know exactly what you're feeling. I've been there myself. When Tesla was getting off the ground, we had offers from major corporations. They had the capital to make things happen faster, but I knew that if we went down that road, I'd be giving up the very soul of what I wanted to create. At the same time, I needed resources to move forward." He paused, looking directly at Maya. "Here's what I learned. The question isn't whether you should accept the offer. It's how you accept it. You have to stay in control of the narrative. MedCorp isn't going to change your technology unless you let them. You can bring them on board, but you have to set the terms. If you give them the keys to the kingdom, they'll try to drive it in a direction that benefits them. But if you keep your vision clear, you can leverage their resources without losing what makes your invention unique." Maya absorbed his words. Elon had done the impossible, turning Tesla and SpaceX into globally recognized names without losing his vision, without compromising his ideals. Maybe it was possible for her to do the same. By the time Maya returned to her office that evening, the weight of her decision felt even heavier. MedCorp's offer was tempting. The resources they provided could ensure that the artificial heart reached the people who needed it most. But could she keep her integrity intact while navigating the corporate world? She glanced at the clock. It was getting late, and there was no easy way out of this decision. The more she thought about it, the more she realized that she couldn't do it alone. She needed partners, but not at the cost of her mission. It was time to set the terms. Time to negotiate on her own terms, with the world watching. She had a revolutionary technology, but it had to stay true to its purpose, to save lives, not just make money. Maya stood at the edge of a precipice. Her decision weighed heavily on her heart, but time was running out. MedCorp's offer was on the table, and the clock was ticking down to the moment she had to decide. Every day, she received more calls, more emails, more messages from potential investors, regulators, and people who just wanted to talk to the woman who had created the future of organ transplantation. But through it all, one truth remained clear. She couldn't do this alone. Jason had been supportive, Elon had been wise, but the pressure was beginning to show. The trials were advancing, but there was still so much to be done. New tests, new patient data to review, and still no guarantees that the artificial heart would be accepted by the broader medical community. She needed more resources, more help, but at what cost? She was being torn between two worlds, the world of science and ethics, where she had always been driven by a sense of duty to humanity, and the world of business and power, where the stakes were higher and the potential for success or failure was even greater. The breakthrough trial was supposed to be a milestone. It was the first large-scale human trial where patients who had been implanted with the self-healing artificial heart were starting to show signs of dramatic improvement. Hearts that had once struggled to function were now thriving. Patients who had been given weeks to live were now going on months and even years without complications. But amid the triumph, there was another storm brewing. News outlets were beginning to stir up more than just excitement about the artificial heart. They were questioning the ethics of using such advanced technology at the cost of human organ donations. Groups representing donor families were taking to social media, pushing back against what they saw as a disruption of the sacred bond between human life and organ donation. A viral video surfaced showing a group of people, many of whom had lost loved ones waiting for donor hearts, protesting outside hospitals where the trials were being conducted. They argued that the widespread use of artificial hearts would reduce the need for organ donation, thus depriving the system of much-needed organs. The outcry was swift. News segments debated whether technology was undermining the human connection at the heart of organ donation. One particularly damning headline read, "Maya Johnson's artificial heart, a miracle or the end of organ donation as we know it?" The controversy spread like wildfire, making it impossible for Maya to ignore. Calls from journalists, advocacy groups, and even her own colleagues flooded her inbox. One evening, when Maya had just managed to get through the mountain of messages, her phone buzzed again. This time, it was a call from Dr. Carol Benton, the president of the National Organ Transplant Association, NOTA, the organization that had once expressed concerns about her work. The voice on the other end was calm but firm. "Maya, I know things have been difficult for you lately, but I want you to know that NOTA is still fully committed to discussing the future of your artificial heart technology. However, I need to be transparent with you," Dr. Benton said. "There's growing pressure from government regulators and medical ethics committees to pause the trials until we can fully assess the long-term effects of these artificial hearts. Some of our members are concerned that the artificial heart may become so widespread that it disrupts the organ donation system in ways we haven't fully understood yet." Maya clenched her fists. The news didn't come as a surprise. It was a storm that had been building for weeks. But hearing it out loud, spoken so plainly, was a gut punch. "I'm aware of the concerns," Maya replied, keeping her voice steady. "But the trials have been overwhelmingly positive. These patients are alive because of this heart. We can't just stop now." There was a long pause before Dr. Benton responded. "I agree with you, Maya, but there are powerful forces at play here, and we have to proceed cautiously. If you move forward without addressing the ethical concerns, we could see a huge backlash, not just from the public, but from the medical community too. And that could set us back years, even decades." Maya felt the weight of her responsibility. She wasn't just creating a new technology, she was challenging the very foundation of the organ donation system. "I understand," she said finally, her voice quieter. "I'm doing everything I can to make sure that the benefits of this heart outweigh the risks. I can't stop now, Dr. Benton. People are waiting, people are suffering, and the longer we delay, the more lives we lose." Dr. Benton sighed. "Just think about it. I'm still in your corner, but there are very real risks here. The road ahead won't be easy." The next day, Jason sat across from Maya at her desk, a stack of research papers and trial reports scattered between them. He had been unusually quiet, and Maya could tell something was weighing on his mind. "Jason," she said, breaking the silence, "you've been distant lately. Talk to me. What's going on?" Jason looked up, his expression serious. "Maya, I've been thinking about your decision, about the MedCorp offer. And I get it, I really do. It's a huge opportunity to get the technology out there faster, to save more lives. But I also know how dangerous it could be for you. We've seen this happen before. Companies come in, they promise the world, but they start pulling the strings. You'll be giving up control of your vision, and once that happens, there's no going back." Maya's stomach tightened. She knew what he was saying was true, but part of her felt like she had no other choice. The trials needed more funding, more infrastructure. She couldn't keep doing this on her own. Jason continued, his voice low but determined. "You've always said that the goal was never to just make money. It was to change the world. But if you sign on with MedCorp, they're not just going to give you free rein. They'll start pushing their agenda, making decisions based on profit margins instead of saving lives. I can't sit back and watch you lose what makes this heart so special." Maya sat back in her chair, the words hitting her like a wave. She had known this moment was coming, the moment where she had to decide whether to give in to the pressure or hold firm to her values. "I don't know what to do, Jason," she admitted. "The stakes are so high. People are desperate for this technology, but the ethical concerns are real. I'm not sure I can carry this burden alone." Jason reached out and placed a hand on hers. "You don't have to do it alone. We're in this together, remember? Let's figure this out, not just for the heart, but for the future of medicine." That night, Maya couldn't sleep. Her mind was racing, turning over every possibility, every scenario. MedCorp's offer was so tempting, but it felt like a betrayal, betraying herself, betraying the mission she had worked so hard to build. But without them, the trials might never progress fast enough. She might never see her dream come to fruition. Her phone buzzed with a text message. It was from Elon. "Maya, you can't let fear of the unknown keep you from taking the next step. The world needs this technology, but only you can decide how it gets to them. Don't lose your vision. You've got this." That was all she needed to hear. Maya stood up, walked over to the window, and looked out at the city skyline. The weight of the decision loomed large, but her resolve had solidified. She wouldn't compromise her values for the sake of convenience. The world needed this technology, but it needed it on her terms. She wouldn't let anyone take control of the vision she had worked so hard to bring to life. Maya picked up the phone. She dialed MedCorp's number. "I've made my decision," she said, her voice steady. "I'll partner with you, but only on my terms. The artificial heart will be distributed ethically. The technology will be used for the good of humanity, not for profits. If you want in, you need to play by those rules." There was a pause on the other end of the line. Then, Michael Carter from MedCorp spoke. "Understood. We'll work with you. Your terms are non-negotiable." Maya hung up the phone, feeling a sense of relief wash over her. She had taken the first step in keeping her vision intact, and now it was time to move forward. Maya had made her decision. She had stood firm, rejected the easy way out, and secured a partnership with MedCorp on her own terms. The deal had been struck, but as with all things in the world of innovation, the battle was far from over. With MedCorp on board, funding began to flow, and the development of the self-healing artificial heart took another leap forward. New clinical trials began to expand beyond the initial phase. The technology was now on the brink of mass production. Yet, as things were progressing rapidly on the technological front, new challenges were emerging. Ones that tested her moral compass and forced her to confront the darker side of her own creation. The first signs of the shifting tide came just weeks after the deal with MedCorp had been finalized. The heart, now tested on hundreds of patients, had been showing positive results, and the excitement in the medical community was palpable. But as the technology became more widely known, the political and social conversations surrounding it became far more complex. Reports began surfacing about the unequal distribution of the technology. While the artificial heart was heralded as a miracle in medical circles, it was quickly becoming apparent that the rich and powerful had easier access to the life-saving technology, while poorer communities struggled to get it at all. Hospitals in affluent areas had the resources to implement the heart, while those in low-income regions were being left behind. Maya's phone was ringing off the hook. Activists from the health equity movement began protesting, demanding that the technology be distributed equally, accusing MedCorp of profit-driven decisions that prioritized money over lives. One particularly heated protest in California caught national attention. Dr. Eliza Hernandez, a prominent social justice advocate, was leading the charge. "Why should the wealthiest people get to live while the rest of us suffer?" she shouted in front of a MedCorp-sponsored press event. "We can't let these corporate giants decide who gets to live based on their bank accounts." Maya watched the footage with a growing sense of unease. These protests were more than just noise. They were calling out a real flaw in the system. Her technology, once a tool for hope, was now a symbol of inequality. The very thing she had worked so hard for, with the hope of saving lives, was beginning to be seen as another tool for perpetuating the divide between the haves and the have-nots. Things escalated quickly. News outlets picked up the protests, and the media began framing the artificial heart not as a medical marvel, but as a symbol of inequality in the healthcare system. Interviews with critics, including Dr. Hernandez, painted a grim picture of a society where the rich lived indefinitely, while the poor died waiting for donations. Maya couldn't escape the scrutiny. Every time she stepped out of her office or made a public statement, she was bombarded with questions about the ethics of distribution. "How can you justify this, Maya?" one interviewer asked. "Your invention has the potential to save lives, but instead, it's only accessible to a privileged few. Are you contributing to the very system you were trying to disrupt?" Elon had warned her that it wouldn't be easy. He had warned her that even the best intentions could become twisted when money and power entered the equation. But hearing the anger and frustration from those who felt left out was something she hadn't fully anticipated. She had always believed in the democratizing potential of her technology, if only it were accessible to everyone. But now, it felt as though it was slipping through her fingers, and she was losing control of its future. In the midst of the growing media storm, Maya received a call from Michael Carter, the CEO of MedCorp. The tension in his voice was palpable. "Maya," he said, "we need to have a conversation. The media fallout from the protests is starting to get out of hand. We've been getting pressure from investors, regulators, and even political leaders. They're demanding we respond to the accusations about the inequality in distribution. I'm aware, Maya replied, her voice tight. I've been following the coverage. We can't ignore it. Look, I understand you want this technology to be accessible to everyone, but there's a reason why we're prioritizing the more affluent areas first. It's about scaling production. You know as well as I do that the costs of manufacturing these hearts are high, and right now, we can't afford to make them accessible to every single hospital in the country. Maya's blood ran cold. So, it's a matter of cost? You're telling me that the poor can't have access to life-saving technology just because it's too expensive to produce? Michael hesitated. It's not like that. We're doing the best we can, Maya, but we need time to scale up production. The wealthy, the ones who can afford this technology, are going to be the ones who enable us to do that. Once we reach that point, we can start expanding to underserved areas. It's a gradual process. But people are dying, Michael, Maya said, her voice breaking. People don't have time for a gradual process. Every minute we wait is another life lost. I know you're frustrated, but we have to be pragmatic here. We're not the ones causing the inequality. We're trying to solve it by making the technology scalable. The call ended with no resolution, and Maya was left with a sick feeling in her stomach. MedCorp's priority was profit and scalability, not social justice or equal access. She was beginning to realize that she was part of a much larger machine than she had anticipated. A machine driven by the same forces that had always prioritized the wealthy. That night, Maya sat in her office, the weight of her decisions pressing down on her like 1,000 tons. The news cycle kept turning, the protests kept growing, and the pressure from MedCorp was starting to feel suffocating. She couldn't simply stand by and watch this technology, the one thing that could save lives, become a privilege for the few. But what could she do? She had already made the decision to partner with MedCorp, and she had already secured the resources to take the technology forward. But she had made one critical mistake. She had trusted that the system would help people, not exploit them. She needed to take action. She needed to set a new course. Maya gathered her team together, Jason, Elon, Dr. Benton, and a few trusted advisors. They met in her office, the air thick with tension. We can't ignore this anymore, Maya began, her voice resolute. The current system isn't working. MedCorp wants to scale the technology, but they're doing it on their own terms, and they're leaving millions of people behind. I can't let that happen. Jason looked at her with concern. Maya, what are you saying? You can't just walk away from MedCorp. We need their resources to make this work. I'm not walking away, she replied firmly, but I am going to take control of the situation. I'm going to create a separate initiative, one that focuses exclusively on making the artificial heart available to low-income communities and the underserved. Elon raised an eyebrow. You're going to compete with MedCorp? No, Maya said, shaking her head. I'm going to work with them, but I'm going to create an independent program that ensures no one is left behind. I'll fund it myself, with the backing of private donors and philanthropic organizations. We'll create a model that ensures the technology gets to everyone who needs it, rich or poor. Jason smiled. That's the Maya I know, taking control and making things right. Maya knew this path would not be easy. She would face opposition from MedCorp, from the government, and possibly even from within her own team. But she had made a promise to herself to never let money dictate who lived and who died. This heart was about saving lives, not about making billions. She would fight for the right to access, and she would do it by leveraging every ounce of her influence. Let's do this, she said, determination burning in her eyes. It's time to make sure this heart is a miracle for everyone. Maya's decision to launch a separate initiative focused on making the self-healing artificial heart available to underserved communities wasn't met with universal approval. While some of her colleagues, including Jason and Elon, rallied behind her, the path ahead was fraught with obstacles, political, financial, and ethical. MedCorp, once a partner, now saw her actions as a threat to their exclusive deal. Government regulators were nervous about the dual tracks, unsure of how to handle the growing complexity of the situation. But Maya was resolute. If the technology was to live up to its promise, it had to be available to everyone, not just those with deep pockets. The human cost of waiting for an organ transplant, the heart of her invention's true purpose, could not be ignored. Just days after Maya's announcement, she received a stern phone call from Michael Carter, CEO of MedCorp. "Maya," he said, his voice sharp, "I need to know what the hell is going on. We had a deal. You agreed to work with us exclusively. But now you're starting this independent initiative, and it's jeopardizing everything. We can't have you playing both sides." Maya leaned back in her chair, taking a deep breath before responding. "Michael, I told you from the beginning, I would never allow the technology to be used for profit at the expense of people's lives. I've been trying to work with you to make sure this heart reaches those who need it, but you and your investors are only focused on scaling it to maximize profits. You're damn right we're focused on scaling it. That's how we get the heart into the hands of more people. But it has to make business sense first, Maya. This is how markets work. You can't throw all that away on some idealistic notion of equality." Maya's patience thinned. "I'm not throwing anything away, Michael. This isn't idealism. It's justice. People are dying while you sit in your ivory tower deciding who gets to live. If you won't work with me on this, then fine. But I won't stop. I won't be part of a system that lets people suffer because they don't have money." There was a pause on the other end of the line, and when Michael spoke again, his voice was colder. "You're making a huge mistake. You can't fight us. You'll lose everything." "Not if I can help it," Maya said firmly before hanging up the phone. Maya's independent initiative quickly made headlines. News outlets praised her for taking a stand against the inequality in the healthcare system. Social media was flooded with support from activists, healthcare workers, and those who felt left behind by the system. But with that support came criticism. The higher the stakes, the more powerful the enemies. Politicians, many of whom were tied to corporate interests, began attacking Maya publicly. One prominent senator, Senator Grace Mitchell, went on national television to argue against Maya's plan. "Maya Johnson is a radical," Senator Mitchell stated. "Her push for universal access to this artificial heart could completely destabilize our healthcare system. The last thing we need is another Silicon Valley tech mogul playing doctor and making decisions about who gets life-saving treatment based on emotional appeals rather than pragmatic healthcare policies." The political machine was beginning to move against Maya, and she could feel the pressure mounting. The response from MedCorp had been aggressive, but this was a new level of hostility. Despite the backlash, Maya pressed forward. She knew that she couldn't take down the corporate juggernauts and politicians alone, but she didn't have to. She had allies, and they were ready to fight. Dr. Carol Benton, the president of the National Organ Transplant Association, NOTA, called Maya in the middle of the storm. "Maya," Dr. Benton said, "I've been following the situation closely. I want to help." "You've been on the sidelines for too long, Dr. Benton. Why now?" Maya asked, her voice wary. "I understand the challenges you're facing. The concerns about fairness and accessibility are real, but I believe your initiative is necessary. It's time we start challenging the status quo, not just for the heart but for healthcare in general." Maya felt a flicker of hope. "What do you suggest?" "First, we need to create a legal and ethical framework around this technology, one that will allow the heart to be distributed based on need, not wealth. We need legislation that makes the distribution of life-saving technologies like this heart part of a public health initiative. You need to make your case to Congress, loudly and clearly. If we can get government support, we can start influencing healthcare policy at the national level." It was a bold move, a political battle, but it was the kind of fight Maya was prepared to take on. Maya had the technology, but now she needed to mobilize the people. If she was going to take on MedCorp and the political establishment, she needed to show the world just how vital her mission was. She launched an awareness campaign called Hearts for All, a movement designed to promote equity in the distribution of life-saving technologies. The campaign was centered around the stories of patients who had received the artificial heart and the families who had been affected by the organ shortage crisis. She wanted the world to see the human faces behind the technology. Maya worked with activists, celebrities, and healthcare professionals to amplify the message. It wasn't just about the heart. It was about reforming the entire system that determined who lived and who died. The response was overwhelming. People began writing letters, sharing their own stories, and organizing local protests demanding equal access to the artificial heart. The movement started to gain traction. Soon, it wasn't just an idea being pushed by a tech mogul and a small group of activists. It was a national conversation about justice, fairness, and the right to life. A month into the campaign, Maya was invited to testify before a Senate subcommittee on healthcare and equality. The committee was convening to discuss the growing issues in the organ donation system, but the focus had expanded to include new technologies like Maya's artificial heart. Standing in front of a room full of skeptical lawmakers, Maya took a deep breath and began. "Thank you, Chairman Walker and members of the committee, for allowing me the opportunity to speak today. We are at a crossroads in healthcare. The question is no longer just about developing life-saving technologies. It's about who gets access to them. I stand before you as someone who has dedicated her life to creating a heart that can save lives. But I also stand before you as someone who understands that if we do not act, those lives will be lost. If we continue to allow the wealthy to decide who gets treatment and who doesn't, we will create a world where healthcare is just another privilege of the rich." The room was quiet as she spoke. Her words were calm but forceful. For the first time, Maya felt like the entire country was listening. "When I created this heart, my mission was never to sell a product. My mission was to save lives, all lives. We can no longer allow the corporate interests and political powers to control who gets access to life-saving treatments. It's time to make a change. We need a healthcare system that is based on need, not wealth." There was a long pause after she finished. Then, unexpectedly, Senator Grace Mitchell, the same politician who had publicly attacked her, leaned forward. "Maya," she said, her voice surprisingly softer, "your words are powerful, and while I have disagreements with how you've gone about things, I cannot deny that what you've said is true. Healthcare has become a commodity, not a right. Perhaps it's time for us to look at new policies. We'll be following up on this, but we need to have a conversation about how to fix the system." It wasn't a victory, yet, but it was a step forward. Maya walked out of the hearing room, her heart racing. She had made her case, and for the first time, the world was beginning to take her seriously. The fight was far from over, but now there was a glimmer of hope that change was possible. She had no illusions about how difficult the road ahead would be. MedCorp would not give up easily, and the political forces in Washington had their own agenda. But Maya was done being a passive player. She was ready to be a changemaker. With the backing of activists, legislators, and the public, she was determined to ensure that no one was left behind. The world needed the artificial heart, and now the world would fight for it. The momentum behind Maya's Hearts for All campaign was undeniable, but the forces aligned against her were becoming just as powerful. The stakes had grown higher, the battles more intense, and the opposition was no longer just corporate. It was deeply political. Maya had already made significant headway with the public, drawing national attention to the issues of healthcare inequality and access. But now, with the campaign gaining more traction, the political elite were circling, ready to fight back. Senator Grace Mitchell and her allies had begun using every tool at their disposal to counter Maya's push for reform, and MedCorp was pulling strings behind the scenes, ensuring that the momentum didn't slip from their grasp. Maya knew that the real battle had only just begun. Maya's testimony before the Senate subcommittee had been a defining moment in the campaign. But as expected, the opposing forces had not taken her words lightly. The next few weeks were filled with increasing tension as MedCorp's allies began to lobby aggressively in Washington, using their vast influence to maintain the status quo. One of the most direct challenges came in the form of a bill introduced by Senator Mitchell that would block any attempt to distribute the artificial heart outside of private hospitals, effectively limiting access to only wealthy patients. The bill was framed under the guise of safety regulations, claiming that widespread distribution of the heart could compromise the healthcare system and lead to unforeseen consequences. This was the moment that Maya knew she had to fight back. She wasn't just fighting for her technology anymore. She was fighting for the future of healthcare, a system that could finally prioritize people over profit. But to win, she would have to enter the heart of the political battle. Maya had always known that public support would be key. If she could continue to galvanize public opinion, then the political establishment would have no choice but to listen. But this time, she needed a more direct approach. A few private meetings had already made it clear to Maya that she needed to leverage political pressure, mobilizing her supporters not just to protest, but to vote, to lobby, and to demand action. She called together her strategic team, Jason, Dr. Benton, Elon, and several other advisors. They had worked hard to build the Hearts for All movement, but now it was time to go full throttle. Elon, Maya began, looking around the table. We need to make this impossible to ignore. It's not just about awareness anymore. It's about making sure every single person who believes in this cause has a voice. We need a massive grassroots push. Elon leaned forward, his eyes lighting up. I've been working with some tech platforms to ramp up social media ads, but we need more than just likes. We need organized campaigns that can direct people to petition, call senators, and show up in person. We need the kind of momentum that no politician can ignore. Jason, always the practical one, spoke up next. We need to reach every corner of the country. It's not enough to be in urban areas where people are already on our side. We need to hit the heartland. We need to make people in rural America realize that this issue affects them too. Maya nodded. This was the plan they needed. They had to mobilize the masses and create a groundswell of support that would push the Senate to reconsider their position. Activists, doctors, and patients, the people who would directly benefit from her heart technology, would be the driving force of the movement. As the campaign grew, Maya's efforts began to attract attention from unlikely corners. In a surprise twist, Dr. Eliza Hernandez, the prominent social justice advocate and leader of the healthcare protest movements, reached out to Maya directly. They had clashed in the past, but now they shared a common goal. Maya, Dr. Hernandez said during a video call, I've been watching your progress. I wasn't sure about your intentions before, but I'm convinced now. We both know that MedCorp's push for privatization is a disaster for patients, especially the ones in the most vulnerable communities. I want to offer my full support. Maya raised an eyebrow. You want to work with me? Yes, Eliza said with resolve. The movement is bigger than either of us. If we're going to break the back of corporate greed and ensure this technology helps everyone, we need to unite the voices of the underserved, the activists, the healthcare workers, and the patients. If we can build a coalition that spans the political spectrum, we can force change. Maya's eyes widened. A coalition of activists, healthcare workers, and social justice leaders. It was a bold idea, but it was exactly what they needed to shift the conversation at the national level. Let's make this happen, Maya said, her voice filled with determination. With Eliza Hernandez on board, the campaign took on a new intensity. They rolled out a multi-tiered public relations strategy that would target key swing states in the upcoming midterm elections. The goal wasn't just to pressure senators. It was to create a public demand so overwhelming that no politician, regardless of party affiliation, could ignore it. Maya and her team organized a nationwide rally in Washington, D.C., which was broadcasted live. Thousands of supporters, patients, families, doctors, and activists converged in front of the Capitol building, holding signs that read, Hearts for All, and No One Left Behind. The media coverage was massive, and it sent a clear message to the lawmakers. The public wasn't backing down. People are listening, Maya, Elon said one evening as they monitored the response on social media. The conversation has shifted. More senators are starting to publicly question Senator Mitchell's bill. This is what we've been waiting for. But Maya knew they still weren't out of the woods. The next challenge was to ensure that they had enough support in Congress to block the bill, which would soon be voted on. The day of the Senate vote arrived, and Maya was on edge. She had spent the past week in constant meetings with key lawmakers, trying to sway those on the fence and shore up support. Behind the scenes, she had managed to secure commitments from several senators who were originally opposed to her initiative. But the pressure from MedCorp was still intense. We're doing everything we can, Jason said as Maya walked into the meeting room. We have several senators who are in our corner. It's going to be close, but we're in a good position. Maya nodded. But nothing would feel certain until the final vote. The Capitol building was packed with reporters, lobbyists, and lawmakers as the vote approached. Maya stood at the back of the chamber, surrounded by her team and a group of passionate supporters. The moment had come. The future of her invention and the accessibility of life-saving technology for millions was on the line. Senator Mitchell stood at the podium, giving a final speech in support of the bill that would limit access to the artificial heart. Her arguments were as sharp as ever, focusing on the need to protect the healthcare system and manage costs. Then, it was Maya's turn. She stepped up to the podium, her heart racing, and took a deep breath. "I stand before you today not just as a scientist, but as someone who believes in the fundamental right to life. My technology has the potential to save millions of lives, but we must ensure that it is not restricted by wealth. This bill is not about safety, it is about exclusion. It's about ensuring that only those with money can survive, while the rest of us are left behind." She paused, letting the weight of her words sink in. "I urge you, senators, to vote not just with your party or your donors in mind, but with your conscience. The choice is simple. We can protect the wealthy, or we can save lives." The Senate vote was a monumental moment. When the final tally came in, it was closer than anyone had predicted, but Maya's side had won. 62 senators had voted to reject Senator Mitchell's bill, siding with Maya's campaign to make the self-healing artificial heart accessible to all. Maya felt an overwhelming wave of relief flood over her, followed by a surge of pride. The work she had poured her heart into for so long was starting to pay off. Hearts for All had become not just a movement. It was now the foundation for a new healthcare system, one where equity wasn't just an ideal, but a reality. As the applause died down, Maya's phone buzzed. It was a message from Elon. "Congratulations. We did it. But this is only the beginning. There's a lot of work ahead. Be ready." Maya smiled at the message. Elon was right. This was just the start. But for the first time in a long while, the future felt possible. However, as much as this victory was celebrated by the public and the activists who had stood by Maya, the backlash was swift and fierce. The forces that had opposed her, the politicians and corporate titans, were not ready to give up without a fight. Just days after the Senate vote, MedCorp released a statement condemning the decision as a dangerous precedent that would undermine the healthcare system. "We cannot allow unregulated technologies like the self-healing artificial heart to flood the market. This will not only destabilize healthcare, but it will also put millions of patients at risk. The decision to allow this technology to be distributed without sufficient oversight could lead to catastrophic consequences," the statement read. The media storm was relentless. Articles flooded news outlets, questioning the validity of the science behind the heart, casting doubts on its long-term viability, and accusing Maya of rushing the process without sufficient clinical trials. Maya felt the weight of the criticism. The pressure to prove that the heart was as safe as she claimed was intensifying. She knew the public's trust was a fragile thing, and she had to prove that this technology was as transformative as she had promised. But amidst the storm, a surprising turn of events occurred. Senator Grace Mitchell, the same politician who had fought so fiercely against Maya's initiative, reached out to her for a private meeting. Maya was initially wary, but with everything at stake, she knew she couldn't afford to dismiss any opportunity. When they met in a small, secure conference room in the Capitol, Senator Mitchell didn't waste any time. "Maya," she said, her voice measured but sincere, "I'm not here to fight you. I'm here because I've realized something. The world is changing, and our healthcare system is broken. I've fought for the interests of the powerful for too long, but I'm starting to see that you're right. We have to fix this." Maya blinked, surprised by the sudden shift in tone. "What are you saying, Senator?" "I've come to terms with the fact that I can't keep defending a system that only benefits the wealthy. I'm offering my support for your initiative, but only if we can find a way to make sure this technology is safe, regulated, and sustainable. The last thing I want is for something like this to cause harm or failure because we rushed into it," Senator Mitchell explained. Maya was cautious. "And how do you propose we do that?" "We set up a partnership, a joint committee with the Department of Health and Human Services. We need rigorous clinical trials, oversight, and proper distribution plans. We can't just give this heart to the people without ensuring it works across all demographics and health conditions." Maya paused. It wasn't the full support she'd hoped for, but it was a compromise, one that could solidify her position and provide the legitimacy the heart needed. "I'm willing to consider that," Maya replied, "but only if we ensure the public has access and that the wealthiest aren't the only ones who can get it." Senator Mitchell nodded. "Agreed. Let's work together on this. It's time for healthcare reform, not just another product launch. The days following Maya's meeting with Senator Mitchell were filled with intense negotiations. The political alliance Maya had hoped for was beginning to form. She was now working closely with regulatory bodies, healthcare professionals, and a bipartisan group of senators to ensure that the artificial heart would be distributed responsibly. At the same time, Elon and Jason worked tirelessly behind the scenes to scale production, ensuring that the heart could be manufactured and distributed on a global scale. But they also knew that the technology needed to be validated by rigorous clinical trials. There was a delicate balance between pushing forward and making sure they didn't rush it. "We have to prove that the heart works across all populations," Elon said in one of their meetings. "If we don't, we risk undermining the entire movement. This has to be about long-term success, not just a quick win." Maya agreed. "We've already made history. Let's make sure we don't screw it up by getting too greedy or rushing the process." Weeks later, after extensive clinical trials, the first patient received the self-healing artificial heart in a government-approved hospital. The patient, Carlos Torres, was a 57-year-old man who had been on the transplant list for years. He had been deemed unfit for a traditional transplant due to complications with his immune system, but he had been selected as the first recipient of the new heart. The procedure was a success. Carlos woke up a few days later, feeling better than he had in years. His doctors were cautiously optimistic, and the news spread like wildfire. The breakthrough that many had doubted had now been validated. But with this success came new questions. Could the heart work for everyone? Would it be available for the millions of people who were still waiting for organ transplants? And how would it fare in the long term? Maya's heart swelled with a mix of pride and apprehension. She had fought for this moment, for a world where people didn't have to wait for a donor heart, where they could get access to a life-saving solution. But now that it was here, the challenges were far from over. While the first patient's success was a major milestone, Maya's journey wasn't over. The political landscape had shifted, and public trust in the technology was beginning to solidify, but she knew the road ahead would be difficult. There would be regulatory hurdles, legal battles, and corporate opposition from companies threatened by her innovation. But now, with the backing of unlikely allies like Senator Mitchell and a growing coalition of activists, patients, and healthcare professionals, she had the momentum she needed to push through. But most of all, she knew that this was bigger than any one invention. The self-healing artificial heart wasn't just about saving lives. It was about changing the system. And that, she realized, was the true victory. The victory that Maya had fought so hard for was now under immediate threat, not from public opposition, but from the very corporations she had hoped to disrupt. MedCorp, the giant medical conglomerate that had been the primary force against her heart technology, wasn't about to let her breakthrough go uncontested. The first signs of trouble came when Maya's legal team received an ominous letter. It was a cease and desist order from MedCorp's legal department, accusing her of patent infringement. The message was clear. They were challenging her ownership of the self-healing artificial heart, claiming that the technology had been developed using their proprietary materials and research, which they argued she had unlawfully accessed. "This is a mistake, right?" Maya asked, reading the letter again, her heart sinking. She'd known MedCorp would try to stop her, but this felt like an all-out attack on her work, her invention, and everything she had fought for. "We have to fight this, Maya," Jason said, his voice calm but firm. "This is a corporate play to take control of the technology, and if we let them win, we risk everything." But Maya knew that fighting MedCorp was no simple task. The company had unlimited resources, a massive legal team, and the power to delay or completely shut down her project. With their influence in both government and the private healthcare sector, this legal battle had the potential to set her back for years. She felt a deep pang of frustration. It wasn't just the legal challenge that threatened her. It was the principle behind it. She had created this heart to help people, to save lives, and now MedCorp wanted to take it from her, all for the sake of profit and control. "We need to prepare for a fight that's going to be long and costly," Maya said, her voice resolute. "I'm not going to let them take this from me." The first step in the fight was to gather evidence. Maya knew that her invention was the result of years of work with her team, and that there were clear records proving she had developed the technology independently. But the challenge was going to be proving that MedCorp's claims were false. Her legal team quickly mobilized, bringing in some of the top patent lawyers in the country. They began digging through the complex web of corporate patents, research documents, and public filings to find any inconsistency in MedCorp's accusations. Meanwhile, Maya's scientific team, including Elon and Dr. Benton, worked on gathering every shred of data that could demonstrate the originality of the technology. As the case developed, Maya couldn't help but feel like the David in this battle against a Goliath. The press began to cover the legal showdown, and soon, headlines were splashed across news outlets. David versus Goliath. Is a revolutionary heart technology about to be taken over by corporate giants? One headline read. Elon, who had been guiding her through the technical and corporate side of the battle, reassured her, Maya, we've got the science on our side. We're just going to need to be patient, stay ahead of their moves, and keep the public on our side. If we win this fight, it's not just a victory for you. It's a victory for everyone who believes in innovation for good. But Maya knew that even with public support, the court system and corporate forces could be a different battle altogether. The first round of the lawsuit ended up being more grueling than anyone expected. MedCorp filed a motion for an injunction, asking the court to immediately halt the distribution of the artificial heart while the case was pending. If granted, this injunction would essentially put a stop to the entire campaign and force Maya to halt the rollout of the heart to patients, people who were already depending on the technology to survive. We can't let them win this, Jason said, pacing back and forth in Maya's office as they awaited the court's decision. If they get the injunction, we could be looking at months of delays, maybe even years. But MedCorp wasn't stopping there. They also initiated an aggressive PR campaign, using their influence to paint Maya as an unethical scientist who had illegally stolen proprietary research to create her heart. The media was flooded with sensational headlines, many of which questioned her integrity and cast doubt on the safety of the heart itself. Maya's heart sank as the public's confidence in her invention started to waver. Despite her best efforts to maintain transparency, she was now fighting a multi-front war, against a corporate juggernaut, against the media that was being fed biased information, and against the legal system that could determine the fate of the heart. As the legal battle raged on, Maya's team began to uncover something that could turn the entire case in their favor. During a routine search of MedCorp's historical research, they stumbled upon a smoking gun, a series of internal memos and emails that revealed that MedCorp had been aware of the artificial heart technology years before Maya had even begun working on it. The documents showed that MedCorp had been tracking independent research in the field of self-healing organs, including early prototypes similar to Maya's heart. In fact, the memos even outlined potential plans to develop a similar technology, but ultimately chose to abandon the project due to cost concerns and lack of public interest. This discovery was a game-changer. If we can prove they abandoned the project for financial reasons, that they never truly intended to bring this technology to market, it could completely undercut their entire argument, Maya said, her voice shaking with disbelief. The legal team went to work immediately, crafting a strategy to introduce the new evidence into court. They knew that this would be highly controversial, but if they succeeded, it could expose MedCorp's true motivations and undermine their claims of ownership. The day of the hearing came. The courtroom was packed with reporters, industry experts, and lawyers. MedCorp's legal team, led by one of the most aggressive corporate litigators in the country, was confident that they would win the injunction. But Maya's team was prepared for a battle, and this time, they had the upper hand. As the defense attorney for MedCorp argued their case, accusing Maya of plagiarism and illegally using proprietary data, Maya's lawyer, Rachel Goldstein, rose to present their new evidence. The tension in the room was palpable as she began to walk the court through the memos and emails that showed MedCorp had been aware of the heart technology and had chosen to abandon it. Your Honor, it's clear from the evidence that MedCorp was never truly interested in pursuing this technology. They shelved it because they deemed it too expensive to develop, while claiming ownership of it now to stifle innovation. My client, Dr. Maya Reynolds, developed this technology independently, using her own resources and ingenuity, Rachel said, her voice steady and confident. The courtroom was silent as the judge studied the documents. It was clear that the tide had shifted. The judge paused for a long moment before speaking. This court finds the evidence presented today compelling. MedCorp's motion for an injunction is hereby denied, the judge announced. The room erupted into murmurs of disbelief. MedCorp's legal team was visibly shocked, and Maya's team couldn't hide their relief. The decision was a huge victory. The self-healing heart would continue to be distributed to patients, and MedCorp's claim to the technology was effectively undermined. However, this legal battle was far from over. While MedCorp had been dealt a significant blow, the corporation would undoubtedly continue to try to find ways to regain control over the heart technology. For Maya, though, this was a turning point. It wasn't just about proving her technology was safe. It was about showing the world that corporations couldn't suppress innovation in the name of profit. Now, with the legal victory behind her, Maya was more determined than ever to continue her fight for healthcare reform. But she knew that the road ahead would require constant vigilance and courage. And there was still one final question to answer. How far would MedCorp go to stop her? Maya's legal victory against MedCorp had been a crushing blow to the corporation's efforts to monopolize the self-healing artificial heart. But the battle was far from over. While the injunction had been denied and the heart continued to save lives, MedCorp wasn't ready to admit defeat. They had deep pockets, an army of lobbyists, and an extensive network of connections. Within days of the court ruling, MedCorp shifted its focus to a new strategy, undermining public trust. They began launching a sophisticated campaign that didn't target the technology itself, but rather the person behind it, Maya Reynolds. If they could destroy her credibility, they reasoned, they could discredit the heart without ever needing to confront its technical merits. The first wave of the attack came in the form of a damaging exposé. Major news outlets like the New York Times and NBC ran investigative pieces that painted Maya as a reckless and unethical innovator. The articles claimed that Maya had rushed her invention to market, bypassing key regulatory approvals and cutting corners on safety protocols. The headlines were designed to strike at the core of her credibility. Self-healing heart, a dangerous gamble or revolutionary breakthrough? The cost of innovation. Maya Reynolds' rise to fame was built on risky science. Anonymous sources within the medical community raised concerns that the heart's long-term effects weren't fully understood. Despite the technology's early successes, these reports suggested that there were still unknowns, potential complications that could arise over time. The stories painted Maya as someone driven more by ambition and profit than by concern for patient safety. At first, Maya tried to brush it off. She knew these attacks were just part of the battle, but as the stories spread, she couldn't ignore the impact they were having. Social media exploded with opinions, and patients who had been relying on the heart for months now faced the doubt of their families and doctors. Even some of her closest allies began questioning her judgment. Elon, despite his unwavering belief in the heart's potential, pulled her aside one evening. "Maya, we have to take this seriously," he said, his tone more cautious than she was used to. "The media has a way of turning public perception. If we don't address this head-on, it could do irreversible damage." Maya nodded, but her mind was racing. She had fought so hard to get here, to give people hope, to revolutionize healthcare. But now, the very people she sought to help were beginning to feel uncertain about the heart's future. In the days that followed, Maya spent hours combing through the articles and watching the news segments. They were filled with interviews from critics, mostly medical professionals who had previously been skeptical of her technology. These were voices she couldn't simply dismiss. Her heart sank when she saw a segment where Dr. Isaac Cohen, a respected cardiologist who had supported her in the early stages of development, now questioned whether the heart was ready for widespread use. "Maya has always been a visionary," Dr. Cohen said on live television. "But innovation comes with risks. And sometimes those risks don't pay off. What happens if these self-healing hearts start failing? The consequences could be catastrophic." The weight of those words hit Maya harder than she expected. She had worked tirelessly to prove the heart's worth, but the reality was, she didn't have all the answers. Jason noticed the change in her demeanor. "Maya, we've been through worse. The heart works. We know it works. You know it works. Don't let them tear you down." But it wasn't that simple. Self-doubt had begun to creep in. If MedCorp was using these attacks to plant seeds of doubt, then the public perception of the heart could unravel. She needed a solution, and fast. Elon called a strategy meeting the next morning. He'd been thinking about the situation, and he had a plan. "I've been talking with a few key people," he began. "We can't just sit back and let them define the narrative. We need to go on the offensive. I've got a team ready to help us take control of this story." Maya listened intently. She knew Elon's mind was always working on a different level. He wasn't just a tech visionary, he was a master of public relations, too. "I've lined up interviews with some of the leading scientists who've been involved in the trials," Elon continued. "They can speak to the heart's safety and the groundbreaking nature of your work. We also need to get ahead of the media by releasing detailed reports on patient outcomes." Maya felt a flicker of hope. "You're right. We have the facts on our side. If we can just get those into the public eye, we can turn this around." The game plan was clear: public appearances, press conferences, and a campaign to highlight the real-world successes of the self-healing heart. The goal was to put the evidence front and center, show the world that this wasn't just a theoretical concept, but a life-saving reality for people who had nowhere else to turn. But Elon's plan wasn't just about pushing the technology. It was also about bringing Maya's personal story to the forefront. The media was attacking her as an entrepreneur, but they hadn't fully understood the human side of her journey, the sacrifices, the struggles, and the losses that had led her to this point. She wasn't just some faceless inventor. She was someone who had poured her heart and soul into a technology that could change the world. The first major move came when Maya agreed to a live interview with Anderson Cooper on CNN. The format was simple. They would discuss the current state of the heart, its safety protocols, and the long-term outlook for the patients who had received it. As the interview began, Maya felt the pressure. But with Elon's advice echoing in her mind, she decided to take control of the conversation. "This heart has saved lives, and it's continuing to save lives. I understand the concerns, and I appreciate the questions. But the science doesn't lie. We have extensive clinical trials, and the results speak for themselves," she said, her voice calm and steady. She went on to explain the rigorous testing the heart had undergone, the success stories from patients, and the overwhelming support from the medical community. As she spoke, she felt her confidence returning. Elon had been right. The facts were on her side. After the interview aired, the media began to shift. Articles that had once been filled with doubt now turned to stories of hope. Patients who had received the heart began to speak out, sharing their life-changing experiences. Dr. Cohen, the cardiologist who had previously criticized the heart, publicly apologized, stating that he had underestimated the technology's potential. "I've seen firsthand the amazing progress of these patients. The results are undeniable." By the end of the week, the tide had started to turn in her favor. Public support surged, and with it, the pressure on MedCorp began to mount. Their corporate attacks were becoming increasingly ineffective as more and more voices in the scientific community rallied behind Maya. But Maya knew that the battle wasn't over. MedCorp wouldn't give up so easily. They were playing a long game, and Maya had to stay ahead. As the days passed, Maya received an unexpected message from an unlikely source: Senator Grace Mitchell. The same senator who had once opposed her initiative had now reached out to express her support. "I've been following your progress, Maya," Mitchell wrote. "I've seen the positive impact of your heart on the lives of so many people. I've also seen the way MedCorp is trying to block progress. I want to help you. Let's work together." Maya was stunned. She had no idea what had changed in Mitchell's stance, but this offer of support felt like a turning point. In her response, Maya wrote, "Thank you, Senator. The fight is far from over, but your support would mean everything. Let's make sure innovation wins." Maya's victory over MedCorp in the courtroom and the media was a huge win, but she knew that the war was far from over. MedCorp, bruised but not beaten, wasn't going to accept defeat. Their new strategy was more subtle, but equally dangerous. Instead of going directly after the heart technology itself, MedCorp began to target Maya's supporters, attempting to undermine her credibility through more covert means. It started with a technical glitch. Late one night, as Maya and her team were preparing to submit a crucial research paper to the National Institute of Health (NIH), the entire database they had been working on suddenly disappeared. Thousands of pages of patient data, research findings, and technical schematics gone. It wasn't a simple mistake. This was deliberate. "This is impossible. I just saw it here earlier today," Maya said, her voice tight with panic. She sat in front of the monitor, refreshing the page over and over, but the files were gone. Jason, who had been working late alongside her, immediately pulled out his phone and called their IT security team. "We need to check the server logs. Someone hacked into our system." As the IT team traced the breach, it became clear that it wasn't an amateur hack. It was sophisticated, professionally executed. The files hadn't just been deleted. They had been scrubbed clean from their system. "This is a message," Maya said, her stomach sinking. "They're trying to discredit us. If we can't provide our findings, the entire project could fall apart. They know we're at the tipping point." The investigation quickly revealed that the hack had originated from a foreign IP address, which made it difficult to track. But the real shock came when they discovered the IP address was linked to MedCorp. Maya's breath caught in her throat. "MedCorp? They've gone this far?" she murmured. With this new information in hand, Maya and Jason met with Elon, who was already investigating possible countermeasures. Elon's mind was racing. "This is a coordinated attack," he said, pacing the room. "It's not just about silencing you. This is about taking control of the narrative. If MedCorp can get the world to believe your research is flawed, they'll be able to put a stop to everything." But the question was, how far would MedCorp go to achieve that goal? The attack on the database was just one part of a much larger scheme, and Maya knew it wasn't going to stop there. The next morning, the team received another blow. Anonymous leaks had begun to surface about Maya's personal life. Someone had gone to extreme lengths to dig into her past, digging up her family history, her financial records, and even her academic history, searching for anything that could paint her in a negative light. At first, the leaks were small, articles claiming she had exaggerated her credentials, or that she had once been involved in disputed patent claims years earlier. But the leaks began to snowball. The stories quickly grew more personal and salacious. One headline read, "Maya Reynolds, the heart innovator with a secret past. Is she hiding more than she's revealed?" Despite her years of dedication and sacrifice, the media started painting her as a fraud. What had started as a corporate smear campaign now felt like an all-out personal attack. It didn't take long for Maya to realize that MedCorp wasn't working alone. They had partnered with shadowy lobbyists and rival medical organizations to create an alliance of influence that stretched from the media to the political landscape. It was a deeply coordinated effort to turn public opinion against her, eroding the trust she had worked so hard to build. Maya wasn't just fighting MedCorp now. She was fighting an entire ecosystem of power designed to destroy her reputation and bury her technology. She knew it was time to take a more aggressive stance. "We can't just keep reacting to them. We need to go on the offensive," she said, her voice filled with determination. "We've got to expose this network, everything they're doing to us. We have to bring this into the light." Maya decided to take the fight straight to the heart of the enemy. With the help of Senator Grace Mitchell, who had become one of her strongest allies, they began organizing a press conference. This wouldn't be just any ordinary conference. This was going to be a full exposé. Elon had been working behind the scenes, securing documents that connected MedCorp to multiple lobbying firms that had been funding the smear campaign against her. They also had evidence linking MedCorp's top executives to the leaked data about her personal life. "I'll handle the tech side," Elon said. "We'll have everything ready to drop at the press conference. When the world sees the lengths MedCorp is willing to go to, they won't be able to deny it." The night before the conference, Maya sat alone in her office, looking over the files one last time. Her nerves were taut. She wasn't just preparing to defend her work. She was preparing to expose the dirty tactics of a corporate giant that had been playing the long game to control the future of healthcare. "This is it, Maya. Tomorrow, everything changes," she whispered to herself. The next day, the press conference was broadcasted live to millions. Cameras flashed as reporters crowded the room, eager for a glimpse of the woman who had taken on the corporate world and won. Maya stepped up to the podium, her resolve as firm as ever. She knew that this moment would either make or break her. "Thank you all for coming," she began, her voice steady. "Today, I'm here to talk about something far bigger than me. It's about corporate influence, about how giant medical conglomerates like MedCorp are willing to go to any length to suppress innovation and protect their profits." She paused, letting her words sink in. The room was silent, hanging on her every word. We have gathered undeniable evidence that MedCorp has engaged in a coordinated smear campaign against me and my technology, attacking not just the science, but my personal life, my past, my credibility. And this is not just an attack on me. It's an attack on the future of medical progress and patient care. They've used their resources to fund lobbying groups, plant fake news, and even hack into our private systems in an effort to discredit us. The room erupted into a flurry of questions. Maya continued, confident and unflinching. She revealed the evidence, documents, emails, and connections between MedCorp and the lobbyists that had been orchestrating the attacks. MedCorp didn't just try to stop my technology. They tried to destroy my entire career, my reputation, and my life, because they feared the power of innovation. Well, I'm here to tell you that we will not be silenced. The press conference sent shockwaves through the media landscape. For the first time, MedCorp's tactics were under the microscope. Reporters, once skeptical of Maya's intentions, began to question the corporate giant's motives. Public opinion began to shift, with many now seeing MedCorp as the villain in this story. The response was swift. MedCorp issued a public statement denying all allegations and accusing Maya of manipulating the media, but the damage had already been done. The story had gone viral, and the world was now watching closely. Elon was right. This wasn't just about the heart technology anymore. It was about fighting for the truth and exposing the forces that wanted to keep progress hidden for the sake of profits. Maya sat in her office, staring at the glowing screen in front of her, the weight of the past few weeks pressing down on her shoulders. The press conference had been a resounding success, but MedCorp wasn't finished. Far from it. The corporation, backed by a coalition of lobbyists and powerful influencers, had shifted gears once more, this time launching a covert campaign to sabotage the self-healing heart's viability once and for all. Elon had called her that morning, his voice tight with urgency. Maya, we've got a problem. The FDA just announced a new review process for all artificial heart technologies. It's a blanket review, but it targets anything that has a self-healing component. This could delay the approval for years. And there's no doubt in my mind, MedCorp is behind this. Maya's heart sank as she processed the information. This wasn't just an attempt to discredit her. It was an attempt to kill her technology in its tracks. The self-healing heart, which had already begun to change the lives of countless patients, was now in jeopardy of being trapped in bureaucratic red tape. They're using the FDA as a weapon, Maya muttered, more to herself than to Elon. Exactly, Elon replied. And this isn't just about the heart. This is about control. They want to maintain their grip on the market, and they'll do anything to crush us. Maya took a deep breath. She had fought too hard to get this far, and she wasn't about to let MedCorp win now. Not when the self-healing heart was on the cusp of changing the world. The FDA's new review process was a game-changer. Officially, it was being sold as an effort to ensure safety in new medical technologies. But Maya knew better. This was a thinly veiled attempt to halt progress, to slow down the adoption of new treatments that could disrupt the existing medical industry. The first step was to submit additional clinical data on the self-healing heart, which Maya had already collected. However, the FDA's sudden reversal of timelines meant that they were demanding an impossible amount of additional information, and they weren't providing any clarity on what that information needed to be. Elon's team worked tirelessly around the clock, scrambling to gather new data, studies, and documents. But every time they thought they had submitted what the FDA needed, the requirements changed. It felt like an endless loop of delays, a tactic designed to make her team exhausted and to make the public lose faith in the heart's ability to get through regulatory approval. This isn't about safety, Maya. This is a strategic delay. They want us to fail, Elon said, frustration creeping into his voice. I know, but we can't let them win. If we can't fight this on the regulatory front, then we need to fight back in another way, Maya replied, her mind working furiously. As the days passed, the pressure began to mount. Maya knew that if they didn't act fast, public support would begin to erode. The media had already begun to question whether the delays meant the technology was unsafe, despite the overwhelming evidence to the contrary. MedCorp had skillfully manipulated the situation, painting the regulatory delays as an indication of unresolved issues with the heart's design. But Maya wasn't ready to throw in the towel. She had learned one crucial lesson during the course of this fight. The people were her greatest allies. If she could rally public support once more, she might be able to push back against the FDA's obstruction. With Elon's encouragement, she began to reach out to advocacy groups that had been vocal about the need for healthcare innovation. These were groups that had been championing for years the need to bring more cutting-edge technologies into hospitals and clinics, especially those with the potential to save lives. Working alongside Senator Grace Mitchell, who had supported her from the beginning, Maya began to build a grassroots movement aimed at putting pressure on the FDA to expedite its approval process. It was a high-risk move, one that would require the backing of the public at a time when MedCorp was trying to discredit her every step of the way. They launched a petition, calling on the FDA to fast-track approval for the self-healing heart. Alongside it, they ran a social media campaign with a hashtag #SaveTheHeart. Within hours, it went viral. Patients, doctors, and citizens who believed in the heart's potential flooded the petition with signatures, and the hashtag quickly began trending. Maya took to Twitter, posting personal stories of patients whose lives had been saved by the self-healing heart. "I've seen my family members grow older, suffer heart disease, and be told there was nothing we could do. The self-healing heart saved my father. It saved my mother. This isn't just a technology, it's a lifeline. #SaveTheHeart. The more people who shared their stories, the more momentum the movement gained. Suddenly, it wasn't just a fight between Maya Reynolds and MedCorp, it was a battle for the future of healthcare. As the petition and social media campaign grew, the political pressure on the FDA became impossible to ignore. Senator Mitchell, once a skeptic of Maya's project, became one of its loudest defenders. She used her position in Congress to demand that the FDA explain its delay tactics. "We cannot afford to let bureaucratic red tape hinder the progress of life-saving technologies," Senator Mitchell said during a televised interview. "Maya Reynolds has brought us a technology that has the potential to save millions of lives. The American people have spoken, and we have to listen." The political climate began to shift, with a growing number of lawmakers coming out in support of the self-healing heart. MedCorp, which had once controlled the narrative through its vast lobbying network, was now facing a fierce resistance that it hadn't expected. But the stakes were higher than ever. While Maya's public support was growing, MedCorp wasn't just sitting idly by. They were fighting back, privately, quietly, and with even more resources. Maya knew that if the FDA didn't approve the self-healing heart soon, she could lose everything she'd worked for. Weeks turned into months, and the regulatory limbo continued. The FDA's delays were taking their toll on Maya's team. Each new setback felt like a personal failure. Every time they submitted new data, MedCorp found ways to discredit it. They planted doubt in the minds of regulators and doctors, painting Maya as an outlier who was pushing unproven technology onto the public. It wasn't just the heart that was at risk anymore. It was the entire future of medical innovation. If the FDA decided to shelve the self-healing heart indefinitely, it would send a message to the entire industry that pushing for bold change was too dangerous, that the status quo was more important than saving lives. In one of their final meetings before the FDA's decision, Elon turned to Maya with a knowing look. "We've fought this fight from every angle, but now, it's time to take it all the way. If the FDA doesn't approve this, we need to make sure the world knows it wasn't because the heart didn't work, it's because the system failed." Maya Reynolds sat alone in her office, staring out the window at the darkened city skyline. The weight of the past year pressed down on her like a 1,000-ton boulder. The self-healing heart, her life's work, was on the verge of either becoming a revolutionary breakthrough for millions of people or falling victim to the corruption and corporate interests of the powerful forces arrayed against her. The FDA's decision was imminent, and Maya knew this would be the moment of reckoning. The fight had grown bigger than just a technology. It wasn't just about the heart anymore. It was about what that heart represented: progress, innovation, and the future of healthcare. This was a battle for the very soul of medicine, a challenge to the old guard of the medical industry, represented by MedCorp, which sought to maintain its monopoly at all costs. And now, with the FDA on the cusp of making its final ruling, Maya had to prepare for whatever came next. Elon had been instrumental in ensuring that their research was airtight and that all the data they had submitted was sound. But MedCorp's influence was deep, and there was always the possibility that corporate pressure would sway the regulators. "We've done everything we can, Maya," Elon's voice echoed in her mind from the phone call they'd had earlier that day. Now, it's all in the hands of the FDA. But regardless of the outcome, we've exposed the system for what it is. Maya nodded, but the knot in her stomach remained. She wasn't ready to give up, not yet. She had fought too hard, sacrificed too much. Then, her phone buzzed. It was a message from Senator Grace Mitchell. The FDA has scheduled their final decision meeting for tomorrow morning. Be ready for anything. They can't hide the truth forever. Her heart raced. Tomorrow. It all came down to tomorrow. The next day, Maya and Elon sat in a small conference room at the headquarters of the FDA, alongside a team of legal advisors and scientists who had been working with them for months. They were ready for the final decision, which would either approve or reject the self-healing heart for use in hospitals. The tension in the room was palpable. The large monitors on the wall flickered, displaying the meeting agenda. The FDA's decision would have global ramifications, not just for the future of the heart, but for the entire medical field. "We've fought every step of the way to get here," Maya said to Elon, her voice steely. "But now, it's in their hands. All we can do is present the truth." Elon nodded, his expression serious but resolute. "The truth is all we have, and it's a powerful weapon." Minutes later, the FDA panel entered the room. The members sat down, looking over their notes and occasionally glancing at Maya's team. The chairman, Dr. Harrison Blake, a man known for his conservative stance on experimental medical technologies, cleared his throat. "Ms. Reynolds, Dr. Musk, and your team, thank you for your patience." Dr. Blake's voice was neutral, but Maya could see the skepticism in his eyes. "We've reviewed your submission, and we have a few questions before we make our final decision." Maya and Elon exchanged a glance. They had anticipated this. This was the final hurdle. The FDA panel's questions were sharp, clinical, and designed to probe weaknesses in their argument. Some of the inquiries were expected, about long-term safety data, about the integration of the self-healing technology with current systems, and about the potential risks to patients who might be treated with an untested procedure. But then came the real challenge. Dr. Blake asked, "There have been significant concerns raised in the public domain regarding the potential for unintended consequences of this technology. Specifically, the self-healing aspect. How can you assure us that this doesn't pose a danger to patients in the long run, when the body might heal too much, leading to uncontrolled cell growth or other unforeseen complications?" Maya felt the familiar sting of frustration, but she remained calm. MedCorp had been planting these fears in the media for months. They had worked hard to make the self-healing heart seem like a science fiction fantasy, one that was too risky for real-world application. "I understand the concerns," Maya said, her voice firm, "but our technology has undergone extensive clinical trials. We've followed the strictest ethical standards, and the results have been overwhelmingly positive. The self-healing process is based on biomimicry. It works like the human body's natural healing mechanisms. There is no evidence to suggest that it will cause any uncontrolled growth or lead to complications. In fact, the very opposite is true. This heart has the potential to regenerate damaged tissue, prevent heart failure, and improve long-term health outcomes." There was a moment of silence in the room. Maya's words hung in the air, and she could feel the panel members weighing them carefully. Elon leaned forward, ready to provide further technical details, but Maya raised a hand, signaling him to let her handle it. "We're not just talking about a new type of heart. This is about the future of medicine, about giving patients the chance to live longer, healthier lives. That's the heart of what we do." The room was silent for a few moments. Then, Dr. Blake spoke again. "We appreciate your efforts, Ms. Reynolds. This has been an incredibly difficult decision, one that could change the entire landscape of healthcare. But it's not just about the technology. It's about whether we, as a regulatory body, are willing to take the risk of approval." The weight of those words hung heavy in the air. Maya's mind raced. This was it, the moment that would define everything. She could feel the pressure mounting as she waited for the panel to make their final decision. Just as Dr. Blake was about to speak again, a loud knock came from the door. A young man in a suit, holding a briefcase, entered the room. Maya recognized him immediately. He was a representative from MedCorp. "Excuse me, Dr. Blake, but we have new evidence that may affect the decision-making process." The man's voice was smooth, but there was something off about his demeanor. "What kind of evidence?" Dr. Blake asked, narrowing his eyes. The representative handed over a folder of documents. Maya's heart sank as she saw the words "confidential" printed in bold letters across the top. "I'm afraid we've just learned that Ms. Reynolds' team may have misrepresented certain data in their clinical trials," the representative said, his tone dripping with insinuation. "There are allegations of data manipulation, and we believe this might have serious implications for the approval process." A gasp rippled through the room. Maya's chest tightened as she turned to Elon, who looked as stunned as she felt. "This is a last-ditch effort, Maya. MedCorp is throwing everything they can at us." "They're desperate," Elon whispered. Maya stood up, her heart racing, but she knew what she had to do. She wasn't going to let MedCorp get away with this. For what felt like an eternity, the panel discussed the new allegations. But Maya wasn't going to let them get away with it. She raised her hand. "I will not stand by while MedCorp tries to sabotage this process." Maya's voice rang out, steady and clear. "This accusation is a lie. We have nothing to hide. We have worked with full transparency, and I will prove it." With that, Maya handed over a data file of her own, one that had been independently verified by third-party auditors. It was the key to exposing the lie. Minutes later, after reviewing the evidence, the FDA panel turned to Maya. "Ms. Reynolds, after careful review of all the evidence, we are satisfied with your submission. The self-healing heart is approved for use in clinical trials." The room erupted in applause. Maya couldn't believe it. She had won. This is just the beginning. The fight wasn't over, but Maya had achieved something incredible. The self-healing heart had been approved, and it was only a matter of time before it would begin to change the world. As she left the room, Elon beside her, she smiled. "We did it." But she knew that this was just the first step toward a new era of healthcare. The road ahead would be challenging, but she was ready. After all, she had faced down the impossible and come out on top. Thank you for joining us on this incredible journey. Maya's victory is not just a win for one woman, but for millions of people around the world. What do you think the future holds for the self-healing heart? What other technologies could change the world as we know it? Leave a comment below, and don't forget to subscribe for more updates on this groundbreaking technology. Stay tuned for the next chapter in the saga of Maya Reynolds and the self-healing heart.